In California. I'll pass it over to Adrian to do the roll call.
Thank you. Member Landry.
Present.
Member Weiner.
Present.
Member Balkasu.
Present.
Member Stevenson.
Present.
Member Swaminathan. Member Swaminathan.
Yes, present.
Thank you. Member Lakshman. Member Pacheco. Member Harper.
Present.
Member Lutz.
Present.
Vice Chair Souza.
Present.
Chair Hernandez.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. With that, we'll jump into public comment. If there is any, we'll take that now. That is reserved for persons wishing to address the committee on any AVA community energy related matters that are not otherwise on the meeting agenda. Public comments on matters listed on the agenda shall be heard at the time the matter is called. As with all public comment, members of the public who wish to address the committee are customarily limited to 3 minutes per speaker and must complete an electronic speaker slip. The committee chair, that is I, may increase or decrease the time allotted to each speaker. Whew, that's a lot of stuff. Adrian, do you have any speakers or public comments?
There are no hands raised at this time.
Thank you. With that, we'll close the public comment if there's no objections. We'll move on to the approval of the minutes from May 19, 2025. And there I had one minor clarification. And Adrian, are you able to speak to that clarification on the actions by the CS that might report out?
Yes. If my understanding is correct, I should include in the CAC chair report that the CAC voted to not endorse the SB 540 letter. That needs to be included in the chair report.
I think mostly the board.
board.
So CAC voted 7-2, one abstention to oppose the staff recommended letter and support SB 540. And so the board later supported that rejection by a vote of 5-9-1-2. Just to clarify, in reading the minutes, it just said it rejected, so I wasn't quite sure what it rejected.
Got it.
So just clarifying that the board did reject and supporting the letter SB 540 in that case. So that would be the only adjustment I would have. Any other adjustments by the committee? Looking in the room, looking online. Cynthia, do you see anything?
No.
Would you like to make a motion?
Yes. Motion to approve the minutes from May 2023 with the correction just listed.
Thank you. May I have a second from the room or online? Thank you, Peter. That's a second. Any other comments, clarifications? With that, roll call vote, please.
Thank you. Member Landry.
Yes.
Member Weiner.
Yes.
Member Balkasoon.
Yes.
Member Stevenson.
Yes.
Member Swaminathan.
I abstain. I wasn't there last time.
Okay, thank you. Member Pacheco.
Abstain.
Okay. Member Harper.
Yes.
Member Lutz.
Yes.
Vice Chair Souza.
Yes.
Chair Hernandez.
Yes.
Minutes are approved.
Thank you. With that, we'll jump to the chair report from the Board of Directors meeting from May 21st. I'll go over through the bullet points that we covered there and the report out there from my efforts. But first of all, I want to thank our vice chair last month to help take over the meeting after I departed. So I think I had a conflict. So thank you very much for leading that meeting. I appreciate it. That then, I think last the CAC meeting, you took over for me. I had to step away. So thank you very much. Yes.
No problem.
Okay, thank you so much. So during that meeting, the consent agenda was approved. There were some contracts entered and a couple agreements. The CEO reported on subcommittee discussions covering the 2025-26 draft budget, the critical municipal facilities agreements, prepaid energy transaction, and our legislative priorities. There were also regional updates, and I emailed this over to Adrian. He'll upload those and I emailed it to a few of you here. Regional updates include Fremont's residential transition to Renewable 100 is underway. Stockton and Lathrop service is progressing smoothly, according to our CEO, with opt-out rates at 5%, which is within the normal range. AVA participated in the Cal CCA conference in Irvine. Now, I also brought up the item where some CAC members may or may not want to attend that in the future. So at that point, I think the chair asked, Chair Balch suggested maybe write a proposal or some reason why we should have maybe a member of this body go to the Cal CCA. So I was asking if any member here would be interested, we might want to write up a write-up of the value of a member from this body or to go into that conference. All right, it's an annual conference, and the last year was in Irvine. So more of the question that I didn't get to writing that proposal for the chair, but if we were able to draft something, that would be in order.
Yes, I can draft something, but I would like some input or some review with somebody who's really good at, thank you, Indira. So Indira will
Thank you.
help.
Perfect.
Thank you so much.
Yes, that's something we brought to the attention. So thank you very much. With that, we'll have that there as a follow-up. Thank you very much, Member Balkasoon. And then I delivered my remarks about the CAC's interest in reviewing the upcoming budget, which we'll be seeing that tonight. The board did present that budget, that draft budget, showing some concerns around the potential hits on some PG&E rates and adjustments of about $187 million. We did highlight some key things about the potential reduction in the LDBP from $25 million to $10 million. So that was one of the things that were also discussed there about that local development funding and also cutting staff positions. Staff did introduce new approaches to renewable energy procurement, while the board provided feedback on adjustments to customer rates, how much of a discount we might be giving some rates versus not to figure out how we can balance the budget. So they're looking at the budget possibly being impacted from rates and reductions. And I think the PCIA is really what's driving that. Some decisions were going to be made in June, but some of the things we're discussing, maybe the change in procurement levels, how much clean energy we procure versus what's out there, and also the reserve funds. Will we use those or not? I knew Cynthia, Jim, and additional speakers shared comments during the meeting about the budget. However, the board had consensus on adopting a conservative budget scenario and looking for clearer insights into how the various options, such as those rate adjustments, the program cuts, and staff reductions could help close the budget gaps. There's a lot there, which I think we'll see a lot of in the budget discussion, which is the largest topic for the evening. So really focus on that so we can provide feedback, because they spent about an hour speaking through these bullet points and talking about what should we do, what not should we do, what can we do. So we'll see how we can help with that conversation on Wednesday. I also have a conflict on Wednesday, so I'm going to look to our vice chair, see if she can take on that lead on Wednesday to chair that. I'll be there to do the chair report, so I think I'm supposed to reach out to you, but I haven't yet, until now.
Oh, apologize for that.
No, it's just me. So we'll have to see, because I have another conflict that evening. We'll talk more offline about that. They did pass the critical municipal facilities agreement. The board did authorize negotiations. Critical municipal facilities agreement, like the PPAs with the local cities. They had a list of those they were going after. That was presented here and later presented for approval for negotiation, execution with Macmillan Electric and those CC city PPAs. So there's a lot of information going on. And then finally, we had the legislative platform and bill positions approved there that evening. I think there were some comments about the different bills we want to push forward. I think really what we saw, Member Tregub and second and passed through was the staff recommendations. We support the positions on the Assembly bills and Senate bills that were mentioned, and some others that were just to support if amended. So basically, went with staff recommendation with that, and I have that in the staff report too to look at. I think there's other 7 more that are going to hopefully push back, and maybe we'll see that again, see how they change over time. And that was really it. Well, there was a lot, but that's what I covered in a few minutes. Hopefully that makes sense. Questions?
Yes. I was wondering what their initial reaction to the ad hocs and how they felt about that. I know it's just their initial impression, and perhaps as we kind of get more to the forefront and they become accustomed to us, then maybe we can have some sort of interchange.
Yeah, and I forgot they did mention that the presentation was given about the story of pain for ratepayers, and I think Member Lutz was going to invite Richard McCann as next steps for this ad hoc and CAC discussion. So I shared that information. Not a lot of feedback came back, but just presented the information and see where we go from there.
Yeah, I think we could talk a little bit more about that. I think Jim has something to offer, and so does Indira, so
Yeah, and I think we have time for that.
excited about it.
Yeah, and I think we have time for the agenda on that because we'll have the budget, the presentation on drivers of PG&E rate and cost growth, and then the ad hoc committee. So we'll just cover the budget, the presentation and the cost rates and the ad hoc. I think that's mostly our agenda for the evening. Hopefully it's not too much, and hopefully wrap up before Adrian says, kicks us out of here. Anyway,
Maybe it'll be light by the time we finish.
maybe it's getting to the longest day of the year, according to Friday it is. Any other comments about the report or anything else I need to circle back on?
Ed, just for my education.
Yes?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Is your chair report in the minutes, or is it somewhere that I'm not seeing it?
I just sent it via email because I finished it at 5:30. Sent it
Okay.
over to you specifically for Adrian to post as well for everybody else.
Oh, okay, thanks. I
I
didn't see
just
it.
sent it to the leads of the ad hocs and the vice chair right now.
Okay.
So I won't be spamming everybody.
No, I didn't mean to.
No, it's
Yeah,
fine. I
thank
just
you.
sent so everybody can have a copy of it. So just running through it. We'll be online shortly.
Yeah.
Cynthia.
I just wanted to clarify, I know we're having a presentation. I wanted to clarify, I know we're having a presentation this evening on the budget, but are we anticipating, did I hear you correctly, 187 million
I think,
shortfall?
let me just double check my number, what I had before. I think it was potential revenue reduction of $187 million, yes.
Okay.
So we would be short there, but we'll see where that opinion, or what was the matter, what they called it, the PCIA meeting, how it was addressed and what the rates were going to look like. So we'll hear more today about the presentation, where it's at. It'll be new, and then actually Wednesday will be the day for the adoption of it, as I understand it.
Okay, thank you.
Comments?
Yes.
Online, any comments from our other members? Or our CFO has a question or clarification?
No, yeah, I wanted to just add to that clarification. Yeah, 187 million is it's the difference over 2 years. So it will affect half of the fiscal year we were presenting a budget for, and then the first half of the second fiscal year out from now. So I'll show you the numbers when we get into the presentation, but that is in fact the number, 187 million.
Thank you, sir. Members online, any other clarifying questions from the report? All right, then I'll expect my Google rating to be 5 out of 5 stars. Thank you very much. With that, any public comment?
There are no hands raised at this time.
All right, perfect. We'll close public comment. We'll move on to the next agenda item, which I think is the budget. Yeah, so that'll be the FY 2025-26 budget. It is a Board of Directors action items. They will be approving the budget for fiscal year 2025 for 26 expected, and then it is our recommendation, or now lack of recommendation or modifications, to present that information over to the board for the review and feedback on Wednesday. With that, CFO Mills, you have the floor, I believe, correct?
Yes, I do. And I don't know if someone, and Adrian, I'm not sure if you can share, or if someone can share that presentation, that would be great. Thank you. All right. Ask and you shall receive. So, yeah, why don't we go ahead and hop to the first slide, and Howard will be presenting this to the board. He had a conflict tonight, so I was asked to join. So it's a lot of data, a lot of information, and I will look to get through this as swiftly but clearly as possible for everyone. So just to level set you and update you on events that affect the budget, the PUC issued a proposed decision in May indicating the intent to reform the PCIA calculation methodology. It's scheduled to be voted out next week. Also, PG&E made their ERA filing in May as well, but we noted they used outdated market price benchmarks from the end of last year. Last month, before these information releases, we had shown the board a budget without some of the new assumptions, and we have made changes included in our two scenarios, both assuming PCIA reform, but with different market prices included, so differing results. We changed our operating assumptions from lower procurement costs and implementing an optimized compliance period methodology for rec procurement, and look for ways to trim our overhead such that expenses are the same under both scenarios. As part of our effort to manage cash flows, we are assuming starting San Joaquin County in May. Previously it was March, and we will look to have our board consider that timing as part of our proposed budget on Wednesday. Next slide. Okay, so we're asking for the board to approve the base case budget. So we'll show you two different sets of numbers. One is an upside scenario, but then the base case, it's more conservative with our best estimates of market prices. It also employs utilizing previously deferred revenues from our rate stabilization fund and a portion of the 24-25 surplus that is estimated at almost 110 million for this fiscal year to offset any deficits for next year and also plan for the following fiscal year. So we'll get into the uses of that rate stabilization fund mechanism on a slide later in the presentation. Next slide, and you could probably jump ahead too as we talk about the PCIA updates. I see Todd is in the room, and he is welcome to jump in and clarify where I am confused, but
You're doing great, Rusty. Keep it going.
All right. So here are the dates for the rulemaking process and the ERA filings. The Phase 1 PCIA decision will be voted on next week, while the 26 ERA proceeding follows normal timelines and will get updated in October before a final decision in December, such that rates can go into effect January 1st for PG&E. The ERA forecast proceeding at the PUC results in PCIA and PG&E generation rates for the following year. So in this case, that would be 2026. Next slide. The PD proposes to adopt modifications to the PCIA that we have incorporated in our modeling. Specifically, the PD includes the prior 4 years of available transactions instead of only the most recent 21 months. It also uses one value for all RA MPBs that includes system, local, and flexible RA instead of separate values for each type. It also excludes affiliate, swap, and sleeve transactions from RA MPB calculations. So if the PD is finalized, it will increase calendar 2026 PCIA rates for most AVA customers, but lowers calendar 2026 PG&E bundle generation rates. So AVA and CalCCA have engaged in this proceeding and filed comments to negotiate altering this implementation. Next slide. The impact of the PCIA reform is really on AVA revenues. These adjustments are to retroactively true up 2025 resource adequacy MPBs along with a true up for softer prices that have emerged. The full impact is on the 2026 calendar year, which will impact the second half of the budget year we are presenting, and then also the first half of the following year. And as we clarified a couple of minutes ago, we do estimate 187 million revenue reduction in the full calendar year 2026, spread across the 2 fiscal years. 79 million in the fiscal year this budget is concerning, and then 108 million for the first half of the 26-27. And you can see that in the bar chart. It is a rather large variance that this proceeding will cause us. Next slide. This slide shows the significant market price volatility that has resulted in these large swings. These forecasts have been very inaccurate and make the rate setting process very unpredictable for us. For example, the RA market price benchmark, which is the subject of this first phase, was forecast at low levels, but then actualized higher for 23 and 24. And then as prices have begun falling since late 2024, the forecast was set too high and resulted in PCIA being set lower than it should have been. This resulted in increasing our headroom and why we have an above forecast net revenue surplus this year. And you can see that orange bar there, that's what the reform will reset the MPB to in red, much lower. Before I get into the budget itself and start talking through some of the assumptions and the numbers, any questions at this point? Yeah.
Oh, you have a question, Jim?
I do.
There's a question in the room.
It's more, what are the CCA, Cal CCA response? And maybe you have it in here. What was the presentation Ava and the other CCAs made to the CPUC, and is there any indication of what response you'll get, or how they will respond, or is it you're not able to tell?
Sure.
You want me to take that one, Rusty?
Yeah, I was going to say, let me pass that to you, Todd.
Sure. So comments on the proposed decision were due last Thursday. And so Cal CCA, on behalf of all of the CCAs statewide, filed comments on the proposed decision. AVA individually filed, as did several of our peer CCAs. The responses had a procedural and a substantive element to them, which were intertwined. The procedural response was that the PUC, we were railroaded by the Railroad Commission, is kind of the short answer on this one. That the PUC's only evidence in support of the reform that they proposed to adopt in this decision was a staff report, and the staff report was also the basis for refusing to take any further evidence and rushing to judgment on this, which we find problematic. So we, AVA, and I, as a former ALJ, as well as a member leader, actually, of the working group that established the current PUC market price benchmark structure, took great issue with the lack of due process here, and that was the thrust of our AVA's papers. Cal CCA raises similar argument as well, but also focus somewhat on the substance of the changes to the market price benchmark here, and went into the weeds on the staff reports issues in somewhat more detail than we did. I'll pause there.
Well, we feel that we would like to know how much AVA and the other aggregators have already paid PG&E, because we feel that it may be that whatever they're asking is already been adopted, and they should not be asking for any more. And we would like to see where this money is going from, where the request is coming from, like you're saying, and move towards completely rejecting additional PCIA funds. We would like to, we don't see any reason why we should be paying them anymore, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, that we should drop out of it, to completely drop out of the PCIA if it's possible, or to say, because we talked to Richard McCann, we're going to go into this later, but he was talking about how the PCIA is about to invert and that it was a good time to drop out of it if we did. Because they were talking about the various vintage years. I'm not sure if I'm saying this correctly. But since it's the difference between the market value of energy resources contracted for the departing customer and the actual cost of those resources, he was saying that the vintage years, I guess, were not, they're already, it's like double paying, is basically what he said. He was talking about it being, am I saying this correctly, you guys? Because he said that,
Whatever PG&E may have lost in the adoption of having I'm not speaking.
he was saying just to say, he thought PG&E was double collecting with the PCIA because the contracts are now paid and that they're still charging us for the paid contracts in the past.
I'm not sure what Mr. McCann, Dr. McCann was saying there.
He said the generation rate went to 10 cents a kilowatt hour to 17 cents a kilowatt hour, and that something's wrong with the hedge and the contract. And he thought that AVA staff should meet with the other CCAs and discuss the PCIA and the potential impact to AVA and the energy rates.
Yeah, we've definitely been doing that. I'm familiar with
That's
Dr.
probably the
McCann, of course. He was our expert witness on ERAs several years ago. I'm not sure about the particular arguments that he's making here. I will just note, sorry, Peter's got his hand up. We can't just drop out of the PCIA. It's statutory. So that's not in the cards. It's really about fighting over how it gets implemented. We're sort of stuck with it, barring a statutory change.
Well, what if,
Okay, you go first.
go ahead.
Go ahead, Peter.
No, go ahead. I don't want to interrupt.
No, I'm good.
You gotta make sure we speak to the microphone, and we should just be clarifying questions and presentation, and then
Well,
waiting for public comment before you start asking staff for any actions and then we can't really speak to, as a body, until we vote collectively as the we.
That makes sense.
So we have to make sure we look at clarifying questions, what's on the table, and then have dialogue and discussion about what we want or don't want, or what we could recommend the board to do or not do, and/or work with staff to see how they can sort of do things with support of the board. I think we have to level set. I understand we're frustrated, we see the big dip, but we have to sort of walk slowly on this. So,
Yes. Right,
so
yes,
we'll
yes.
go from there. Okay,
Got it.
Peter,
I count as the ignorant one.
and then let's go up to the microphone. Sorry.
'Cause I'm the ignorant member. What resulted in this PCIA reform? What was it that the utilities didn't like or the PUC didn't like that resulted in these changes in the first place? That's number one question. My number two question, which is way after that, is you guys have objected to on due process grounds, basically on procedural grounds. Is there any thought by either AVA or the California CCAs to litigate this in some way? I'll take one question first, then the other.
Yeah, deferring to the chair on how he wants to, do you want me to answer that now, or do you want to?
Not a recommendation, I'm just asking.
Yeah, I understand.
Well, we're not there at the questions, but since it'll defer to, depends how long of the answer, of course.
Oh, it's PCIA. It's going to be a long answer.
Okay, so we're gonna pause, we'll pause on that. We just want to clarify. I understand that there's more question about what is PCIA, and what it means, so we'll hold on to that.
I'm asking about the reform. What was,
And then, yes, the reform is,
why the reform?
so we're talking about, yeah. We're going through the budget at the moment, so I know there's an impact. So let's just hold
Pick it
that
up
question.
offline.
I want to make sure, Ernie, you had a question.
We're at risk of derailing the budget
Right.
conversations.
All right, and then I think, Shiva, you had a question online, so let me get to yours too.
Okay, I have a question on the presentation, the last slide. What are the excess numbers on the axis? Is that available? And understand what's the order of magnitude here for the three graphs. What's the y-axis?
Yeah, go ahead. Jason, I know you're on. Maybe you can provide the color on this chart.
Yeah, so the y-axis is price. Essentially, we cannot reveal the price due to like explicitly, but we can provide it kind of relativistically here.
Okay.
But we have legal, it's confidentiality agreements that prohibit us from revealing prices.
So is
But the-
a PCIA also confidential numbers?
No, no, because that is not contractually, that's not a supplier contract.
Okay.
But the market price benchmarks, well, the historical ones are, I think, public. But the 26, 27, I think are still undisclosed.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions by members online?
No, nothing, no, there are no other hands raised.
Okay, so maybe we do turn back. I know we're going to be going into the budget after this, some really deeper dive to the budget. But the question for that by member Peter here was to clarify the reason for the PCI reform. And he had that question there, Todd. Can we go through that question about the PCI reform and clarify the member's question or clarification?
Sure, there's the stated rationale for the reform, and there's what we suspect is the actual rationale.
Yes.
I'll start with the last first. Basically, the PCI got low, really low. And this might be what Dr. McCann was referring to when he talked about PCI inverting. It actually went negative for some vintages, which means that the legacy assets are actually in the money. And so PG&E was, bundled customers were essentially having to transfer money to departed customers as a function of how this was all playing out, because the assets were making money. They were worth more than the market prices. And that was in large part because the resource adequacy component of the portfolio had become extremely valuable in 2025, for delivery in 2025. And so that the game here for the utilities has been to essentially try and drive down the value of the portfolio in order to maximize PCIA, in order to minimize their bundled customer costs. And so when these benchmarks, and you can see the trend line on the lower left-hand quadrant there, when the RA was becoming extremely valuable, that was having the effect of driving down the PCIA and, by extension, increasing the costs for bundled customer procurement, which the utilities did not like. And so as they were seeing that big rise there in the RA market price benchmark, carrying with it, and you see RPS as well, offsetting the Brown power decreases and thereby increasing the value of the portfolio, decreasing PCIA, it prompted a reaction by the utilities to try and change how these things were measured in order to bring the PCIA back up. That's the kind of the real reason. The stated reason is that the market for RA has become thin. There was a marked decrease in the volume of transactions that are used to inform these market price benchmarks. In addition, it appeared that the market price benchmarks were being influenced by certain transactions, did not look or feel like market transactions. Actually, if we go back, I think 2 slides, I can elaborate a little bit. Yeah, let's hold there. Sort of working through them from bottom. So second bullet, the 3 substructured bullets there. So those affiliate swap and sleeve transactions were in the market price benchmark calculation, but they didn't actually look or feel like market transactions. So the argument was, well, those should probably come out. There are different types of resource adequacy. Going back to how the resource adequacy program is structured in California, you'll see the 3 flavors listed there: system, local, and flex. When we set this up 6 years ago, we had identified structural differences in the value. Specifically, system was generally less valuable than local, and flex could go either way. In the ensuing 6 years, that's gone upside down, and now it's actually system that's extremely expensive. And so the argument coming out of the utilities and echoed in the staff report was, well, we probably shouldn't have those be kept separate anymore. Something's wonky here in how those are segregated. And in particular, that much of the volume that's purchased as system is in fact local, but it wasn't being priced as local. So let's just roll them all together. And then the top bullet, I think, is the one that gives us the most heartburn, which is that in order to bump the volume of transactions up into something that looks more liquid, we should have a longer look back at the transactions that we will take into account, which we think systematically biases the values low, because the further forward you buy, the deeper discount you generally will get from a seller. And then for 2025 in particular, if you go back 4 years, you actually are looking at transactions that predated a huge shift in how RA was procured with the move to something called slice of day. So the first bullet there is ostensibly a response to reduced volumes, but we can't help but notice it really draws down the price significantly by rolling in these transactions that don't account for the shift in how we will transact for RA.
One clarifying question on that.
Yep.
It says that the PD proposes to adopt what Ava modeled as a PCIA reform scenario, not what you wanted.
Correct. Correct. Well, what we wanted was essentially status quo, so that's easy. We know what that looks like too.
Okay, I got it.
Yeah, go ahead and put your mic down if you can.
So when in May, when was it May or April that the proposed decision was issued?
May.
In May, is that when the staff said we don't want to see any more information? And how common is that? You said that the CPUC staff said they didn't want any more data or looked at.
Oh, no, it wasn't the staff. It was the assigned, the assigned administrative law judge. Yeah. Well, Cal CCA, different values of we here. Cal CCA did file to submit testimony and submitted proposed testimony, and it was excluded from the record.
Is there any, procedurally, is that completely dead? Or are you still fighting to actually have your testimony and additional information put in the record?
Well, we're lawyers. It's never completely dead.
There you go. Good, right.
It's out of the record for now. The process, and I think this goes to your second question, Peter, the process would be the commission will issue a decision. We will then have 30 days within which to seek rehearing of that decision. And if rehearing is not, well, so presumably that we file, then the commission will have 180 days to act on the application for rehearing. If the commission does not act, then the rehearing is deemed denied, at which point the filer of the rehearing can go to the Court of Appeals for an appeal. Court of Appeals, not Supreme Court. That's a somewhat recent change. Historically, it was only the Supreme Court, but forget when that was changed. But last 10 or 15 years, it's been to the Court of Appeal.
Thank you.
Isn't it a bit of a conflict that PG&E sets some of the market prices and then says, well, this is worth, our assets are now worth more? Isn't that how, or am I not understanding how this works?
Yeah, I think that's right. I will say the market price benchmarks are established by the commission, and at least the status quo market price benchmarks were established coming out of a process back in 2019 called the Working Group 1 process, and I was a co-leader of that process along with PG&E. We are the stakeholders, CCAs and the utilities are the biggest stakeholders, so it seemed reasonable that we would play a role in it. Ostensibly, the PUC is the arbiter here, making a neutral decision.
Yes.
Looking at the chart here on the market price benchmark trends.
So can we go forward 2 slides?
So the proposed model suggests prior 4 years, but you're only showing 3 years. So shouldn't that be to 2022 then, since it's the prior 4 years? Based on slide 6, which is saying the PD essentially proposes to adopt a AVA model that the prior 4 years. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But what we're seeing here is just 3 years, right?
yeah, the year 4 would be this year, which we don't have
Oh, yeah.
data for yet.
Okay. But wouldn't that be 2026? I mean, I'd see 3 years.
Well, the 2026 rates will be set in 2025 based on the prior 4 years of 2025, which would be 2021.
Okay.
Clear as mud, right?
These sort of. But these are this is the model you're showing here. These are the modeled in your proposed decision. Which one of those charts is showing? None of them are showing the proposed?
That would be the orange.
Okay.
Yeah, the forecast, so it's a mix of things. The 23 and 24 numbers are our PUC numbers. We know what those are. The 2025, 26, 27 numbers are forecast numbers. We don't know for sure what those are, except for the 2025 forecast, which was established in, wait for it, 2024.
And so do those refer to vintage years then?
No, vintage is something else entirely.
It's, yeah, the values shown here are, it's a weighted amount across Ava's jurisdiction.
In this chart, the lower chart. That's Ava's jurisdiction.
Well, yeah, all of them are. They're just three different benchmarks. So the one in the top right is for Brown Power, which is just kind of the around the clock CAISO general the general power that gets put on the grid. The one in the bottom right is our renewables, and the one on the bottom left is our resource adequacy. And the one that is being reformed is the resource adequacy. And so that big blue bar in the middle is the current market bench price that PG&E has stated is what their portfolio is worth. And then the orange is what that reform would be in terms of value difference.
Sorry, Jason,
And-
one
Go ahead.
quick.
Yeah.
It's the PUC establishes the market price benchmark.
Yes,
That's
my-
determined
yeah,
by their,
correct.
by their staff for the PG&E service territory. So
Correct.
It's a PG&E MPB, but it's set by the staff.
And the resource adequacy is what you predicted it would be, the amount of resources needed at the certain dates, right? Is that,
No. What this is here is just a price.
okay.
This is, if you look over on the left there, it's dollars per kW month.
And
So
it's
it's-
based on your contracts?
It's based on all of the transactions for whatever time period it is that you're looking at,
Okay.
just for RA.
And I have a question, Cynthia? You have a question?
Yes, I wanted to ask Todd whether there was going to be a request for a hearing.
Oh, there already has been.
Okay,
It was denied.
and that's it? You can't do anything?
Not at this stage in the game.
Thank you.
Just want to go back to the exit strategy, but is that more a buyout? Maybe I'm just not remembering how PCI works, and this is my fault. But looking at the slide at the bottom left-hand corner, we had the forecast was really high, and now it's really low. This with the CPUC policy change. So that delta between the blue and the red or orange, that's what we have to make up as a group, to make up that difference. What's in that bar chart at bottom left-hand screen of where we were at the forecast, now all the way down to the policy change. They're asking us to make the difference. Is that our hit of $187 million? Or no?
Kind of. Jason, do you want to take a run at that?
Sorry, I missed, it got choppy for a second. I
Sorry,
need to
yeah.
turn my video off, if that's okay.
Sure. I think the
Okay.
question distills down to how does that differential in the RA market price benchmark translate to our revenues?
Correct. So when the market price benchmark is elevated, that creates higher rates that the CPUC approves for PG&E, and it also creates a lower PCIA. When the market price benchmark goes down, then the CPUC approves lower rates, but the PCIA goes up. So that big difference between the forecast and the policy change represents $187 million of revenue for us.
The cost, because the reduction in that PCI value of those assets have gone down, or will be going
Correct.
down, is going to be impacting us by 187. So going back to the question about a buyout or exit, that PCI is valued at something because we're paying that, or our customers are, through that term. Is there like a number that we could get out of?
Yes. So that's approximately estimated at about 3.1 cents per kilowatt month,
So
or kilowatt hour, actually. My apologies.
And how do we pay? So how will we pay that? I'm curious, is that like per customer?
Yes, that is per customer kilowatt hour usage.
Is that
Uh,
our buyout number? Is that what you're saying?
oh, there is, I don't think there's a buyout.
That's what I'm
Todd,
asking.
unless buy, if we think of buyout in the sense that if we wanted to break even on if we could somehow remove ourselves from the PCAA for this next calendar year, yes, then that it would be the same dollar amount. But that's, that's not an option. We're kind of codified into participating.
Yeah, so going back in time, there were three working groups that came out of PUC decision back in 2018. There was Working Group 1, which is the one that set all of this up. There was Working Group 2, which was the working group that was looking into a buyout from the PCIA. So essentially write a check to PG&E and dust off your hands and you're done with PCIA. And then there was Working Group 3, which was the allocation working group. This is all about Working Group 1. What you guys are talking about is Working Group 2, essentially. And it didn't end up really going anywhere because at the end of the day, nobody was willing to take the risk that the price was wrong. So all of this is about stranded cost recovery, right? And so whether a cost is stranded or not actually depends a lot on the market conditions. And so if you wrote a check today, pick a number, $10, and then 4 years, 5 years from now, you said, oh, actually, I shouldn't have written a check for $10. Those assets were not underwater. They were actually really valuable. You should write me a check for $10, but it's too late. You've already written the check for $10. Are you willing to take that kind of risk? And it can go both directions. Okay, maybe you write the check for $10 and it turns out the market moves in such a way that check should have been for $100. The other guy's going to come back looking for $90. And so no one ended up doing anything to move that forward, and it's kind of been dead ever since.
So work group number 2, the feeling was it was too risky. That's why, or
Yeah, I'm essentially summarizing. Neither the CCAs nor the utilities were willing to risk being on the wrong side of that equation.
When we talked to Richard, I thought he said.
For the room, we should have the mic, Jim. Thank you.
My understanding when we talked to Richard McCann was he said the direct access customers did take that buyout. But I don't know.
that was my understanding too from what he
I
said.
don't know the details, so.
Would it be, would it be helpful to engage Dr. McCann and see if there's anything we can glean from him? Because he seemed quite confident that this is the moment that we should break away. I mean,
And to add to that, he also felt that Ava was at risk.
yes.
Okay, so I think that could be a recommendation to the staff, to the board, and we can, if there are any other questions, this portion of the PCIA, we should probably move forward towards the budget. Last question, Peter? We'll give you the mic back.
Yeah, it isn't clear to me from what's been said so far that we have the legal right to break away. Even with, excuse me, it's not clear to me that if we offered a buyout, that it has to be accepted. I mean, it's not clear to me that we have,
But it may weaken their position.
You certainly could revisit the Working Group 2 experience and see what there is to glean from that.
There's no hope. Nothing harmed, I don't think.
Yeah, I think part of it is just really understanding the work that's been done, where we're at today, are the opportunities to pick up things that we thought could work into the future. So as a committee, I think we're just trying to look at different ideas, what could work, what couldn't work, and that's sort of our scope, to work through ideas, what could help out the organization.
It would be a shame to just let PG&E have its way. They would love to see their competition go away.
Yes, agreed. All right, with that, we'll continue on.
See them go.
With that, we'll continue the draft budget so we can see what the staff's worked through and what they're presenting based on these external factors that are going to be impacting the organization and its customers, possibly. So I think we can go back to Rusty. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. And yeah, I think even the next slide, which is the first one in the draft budget section, might also just illustrate a little bit of what has happened here back to 2019. So you can kind of see the blue part of the bar and the pink part of the bars. Those are that's the different components, the PCIA and the average rates, the PG&E rates. And so the components there, as you see, expanded back in 2019, 2020, 2021 because prices were much lower. And then they started shrinking, or the PCIA portion started shrinking as prices rose. And then now you can see in 2025, very, very small PCIA, where the rates are set higher. And then we're forecasting 26 in both of our budget scenarios, the U being the upside, and then the B, which is the one we are proposing to be adopted, is our baseline. And you can see how large the PCIA will change based on the reform that's been proposed by the PUC. So I think with that, why don't we just hop into the budget on the next slide, and we can come back around, and there's probably more on PCIA that folks are going to want to talk about. So on the next slide, we have our budget. The first two columns are budget and actual for current year. You can see we're having a large surplus of over 107 million forecasted to actualize versus the 42 million we had budgeted for. But that 107 million, which we'll show you, we propose to help us manage through the challenging 2026 we are forecasting. The two columns on the right are the scenarios we have formulated. Both assume San Joaquin County starts service in May. Prior versions last month we presented with them starting service in March. So we pushed that out a couple of months. And then essentially the difference in the two is our revenue being lower in both cases, but more so in the base case. And it's important to note that the base case has us using 35 million from our rate stabilization fund, which was set up to balance over and under collections from year to year and protect the value proposition or stabilize the rates for our customers. And then we will talk through a slide that highlights the deferred revenue fund shortly. Next slide. Some additional important assumptions to note in addition to using the rate stabilization funds and San Joaquin County starting in May. Importantly, we're not changing the value proposition. And that fourth bullet down, we are proposing to implement an optimized compliance period procurement methodology that allows us to keep the 81% renewable target for the period 2024 to 2026 by applying already procured RECs to meet our target and lower procurement costs for the next year. We also have an assumed 1% uncollectible rate, and we use the softening market prices together with contracted prices. We also assume no draws on the credit facility or use of reserve funds. We are also assuming only 7 additional staff, which is lower than in prior years. And we still have local development funding of 10 million, a little bit lower than last year, but we still are going to allocate funds. Although we will cover it in a later slide, we do have some aggressive spending ongoing right now and then into next year. So that'll be good to highlight for you. Next slide. So here are some mitigations we have employed in formulating the budget. These we've highlighted many of on prior slides and I've discussed, including the lower local development funding allocation and reduced hiring. And then the proposal to change how we procure our RECs that will lower our power costs and defer revenues to balance the deficit. On the right are some other mitigants we might consider later. We will come back to the board later in the year if we feel it necessary, but it's just good to highlight we do have other tools in the toolbox like adjusting the value proposition if we think that's the only way to get through. We don't feel that at this point. And then possibly changing the procurement targets even further and delaying San Joaquin County even later into 2026. Next slide. Okay, as noted in the full budget table, the major difference in our is our revenues given the PCIA reform and the change to the MPBs. We have no value proposition change, keeping the 5% discount within Bright Choice and the slight premium for to PG&E for the Renewable 100. In the right corner, we note our modeling sensitivities to any future proposed changes, which we are not recommending at this time. You can see a 1% change in the value proposition in Bright Choice results in about 7.3 million of change in our revenues. So if we did want to use that tool, we could raise our revenues quite a bit there by lowering the value proposition. And then also the 25-cent change in the R100 results in about 5.6 million. And then I think if you look at that lower table in the right corner, that's how it would break down across the 2 fiscal years. So first half, which is the second half of fiscal year 25-26, and then the second half being the first half of fiscal year 26-27. See. Next slide. So another step that we took to reduce costs is the optimizing of the REC procurement strategy. California has relaxed the rules for when you can apply procured RECs and have 3 to 4 year compliance periods in which you can use a generated REC. That means we can acquire a REC during a given generating year and then bank them and apply them to another year in a compliance period. This helps with supply and demand and variability and price volatility. This table shows a comparison of our power content label, the PCL, for 2024 with that of PG&E. We are at 96% renewables and large hydro. It's well above our 81% target. You can see in this table that PG&E's is at 23% renewable, which of course, must mean that they use bank RECs to meet their compliance mandate. And maybe go on to the next slide, a little more detail on this topic. With a little more challenging year for cash flow, we looked at adjusting how much we purchased to meet compliance targets. Since we overprocured in 2024 at that 96% level, we do have banked RECs now that we can apply to 25 and 26 and lower the procurement costs. We estimate reduced procurement costs of next year of between 10 to 16 million, which we have incorporated in the budget, just by dropping that down to 73.5% as the target adjusted. It'll still keep us at 81% by using bank RECs to meet that 81% target that the board has for us. Staff will be bringing more detailed procurement strategy and policy to the board in July. Next slide. On to the use of deferred revenues to balance our budget. So in 2020, we set up a rate stabilization fund predicated on GASB 62 revenue deferral. That allowed us to set aside revenues when we have excess to utilize in years like the one forthcoming when cash flow projections are challenging. It helps us preserve the discount or not raise rates if the fund can carry us through. Or they can even be set aside for specific uses, such as on-bill credits. The current balance is 57 million, with 32 million of it set aside specifically for rate stabilization. Based on the strong forecasted surplus of 107 million this year, we will be proposing using a portion of that, about 3 million, to meet the small deficit that's also a little above the 35 million, or the 32 million, to meet the full 35 million deficit. After the audit this fall, we may recommend allocating the remaining surplus to have on hand in the rate stabilization fund to have the full 139 million available for us for this year and the year following if PCIA also affects the 26-27 the way we believe it will, which we've modeled that second half of 26 will also affect us negatively. So next slide. This is an overview of our operating expenditures. For presentation purposes, we divide these into three categories: energy operations, overhead, and non-operating expenses. As you can see, we are very close to budget this year of 817 million. But for 2026, in both scenarios, we have higher energy procurement costs given the full year of Stockton and Lathrop, and then the partial San Joaquin County, which, energy operations comprises about 95% of our costs. But as you can see, those numbers are about 851 million in total. And we can go on to the next slide. A little more detail on the energy operations on this slide. We do use mean forecasted market prices for any open positions and blend that with our contracted prices for all the energy components. This year, as noted before, it's in line with forecasts. The good news on costs is that they are moderating from a couple of years ago, especially on RECs and RA capacity needs. Of course, that turns into a different paradigm for PCIA and PG&E rates. However, prices are still 11% higher year over year, and we do have higher RA and open position costs with the additional load that we have now. We do maintain any exposure to market prices through active hedging, and with prices still above 10-year averages, albeit lower than a couple of years ago, we will diligently hedge when necessary to control costs. Next slide. And the last component, the non-operating revenues, are primarily interest income that's moderately higher, with interest rates being elevated still above our forecasts. And then local development funding makes up the majority of the non-operating costs, along with costs for the credit facility we have at US Bank. As highlighted earlier, we are proposing a smaller allocation for local development to manage through the challenging year. While it is lower at 10 million, we do have some detail in the next two slides that's really good news for those efforts that we're doing. So why don't we move on to the next slide? I'll show you the components of the local development fund. We have 92 million in the fund as of the end of this fiscal year, and proposing to add the 10 million more in the next fiscal year. Although we are lowering the allocation, get into the next slide, we'll show you some of the spending plans. AVA is currently in the execution phase of previously budgeted programs, and additional strategic planning for future phase implementations is on the way. So if you go to the next slide, maybe we can get into a couple of these. On the last slide, this details the continued spending. As mentioned, we are in execution phase, and we're totaling about 21 million in planned expenditures for the next fiscal year, which shows our continued focus on delivering these services that our communities want and need. So across AVA Charge, critical municipal facilities, various grants, solar and storage, for incentives, and then on down, through AVA bike electric incentives and the smart home charging incentives that we have. So we are continuing to spend, but we are going to manage through this challenging year by proposing a little bit lower funding allocation for the next fiscal year. And then I want to wrap it up on the last slide. We will be presenting this budget to the board Wednesday to get approval to utilize previously deferred revenues and a portion of this year's over collections to balance the budget and protect the value proposition while continuing to allocate funding to important programs that I think is important both to our board and then this group here within our local development effort. So with that, I'll go ahead and open it for conversation amongst the members.
Thank you, Rusty, for that presentation. Very detailed. I'll open up to the room here and online for clarifying questions, and then we can get into discussion about what we could recommend to the board for the consideration. I do know that the previous board meeting, they talked more about the heat pump water heater support, and there that you had a 0 there. I do see that you have the future roadmap funding, but that feedback there, that was incorporated into the slide 21, just to clarify?
Yeah, 21 million in total, or to 20,850,000 on the last slide. It's the,
Just to clarify on the heat pump, water heater support, there was feedback from the board of directors that they wanted to see something there to continue funding the air district. Is that something that was considered in this update to the budget?
It was considered, and I think we looked at ways and places we could cut costs, and we're going to propose, at least in this conservative scenario, that we cut that spending. And if the upside budget does materialize, we will put that back in and spend the 5 million that we had in the original budget.
Thank you. I just want to give that color to the committee here, given the conversation that occurred at the board meeting. With that, I'll open it up for clarifying questions from the members online. Switch it up. Members online. Shiva, you have any questions? I'm going to start calling people out. Bring them in. Wake up. Shiva, you have any questions?
No, not at this time.
Got it. All right, Member Harper, is he on?
Yeah, I did have a quick question, actually. I was hoping you could talk a little bit more about the compliance period procurement methodology. Just trying to kind of wrap my head around what that means.
Yeah, so I think just generally, if you can think of the compliance period, say it's a 3-year period, 2024 through 26, you could procure RECs in a generation year, like when a REC is generated because the power was generated in a certain year. You can use that REC to meet your compliance for that year or another year in the compliance period. So, what we're proposing here is to take our over procurement of 2024 RECs and have them as a bank to use for the next 2 fiscal years, or the next 2 calendar years, I should say, for the compliance periods of 25 and 26. And that allows us to lower how much we're procuring for those 2 years, at least on a forecasted basis. So it will just cut into our power costs and lower our outlays for REC procurement in the next 2 years. But it still allows us to meet that 81% target, which is very healthy, given that we are 96% for 2024. We can apply that overage of 15% to the following 2 years, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and a quick follow-up. Does Ava strategically over procure RECs year to year, or is it highly dependent on trying to hedge like where you're what you're
it's
gonna need across a 3-year procurement period?
I think it's not strategically over procured. I mean, you do have bigger than forecasted generation from some of our projects. And that if we, we're looking to procure because we think of a price, maybe there's a chance that prices will go up. We might purchase sooner rather than later. So we do have that those in the bank at a lower cost. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, thank you for that clarification.
Thank you, Member Harper. And I think we're just speaking to slide 16, where you had that 15% over
yes.
procurement. And I just want to make sure we're clear. And then you were able to carry that 50% into 25 and 26.
Yeah.
So then you're still able to meet that threshold 81, 2025, 26. And you have just a change on the adjusted target, which is 73.5 and 73.5. So I think that's what you were speaking to, just to be clear.
Yeah, that is correct. And you can see it's 10 to 16 million, depending on which forecast comes true as far as cost for RECs. And it's a pretty big savings in our energy procurement costs.
And just to build on that question, if I may, that previous year in 2023, that 13% over procurement, what happens to that? Is that carried forward too or not?
Well, it's going to be outside of the procurement period. So we can't go back. We couldn't go back that far. But we can do the 24 to 26 is a period that we could utilize right now.
Thank you for that clarification. Let me one more member online, Member Stevenson, are you still there? Pete.
Yes, I am here.
Any questions or clarifying questions?
I don't.
Right, thank you very much. And I see that as our only other member online, just to be clear, just the two members. Thank you, Peter. I see you now. Peter, yeah, questions, sir? And then Jim after that.
After the presentation, you have supplementary materials. And there were two supplementary material slides that I was interested in pursuing to determine what impact they have on the budget. One is that demand has stayed fairly constant, especially as distributed solar has gone up. But in talking with the chair of the CEC recently, David Hawkshill, he said that 50% of new energy demand will be from AI and data centers, and that we can expect a large growth in demand. Alternatively, if we cannot furnish that generation, we will lose that economic development. So my question is, are we planning for that increase in per capita demand in the near future? And then I have a second question on distribution costs.
Okay, yeah, so on the first one, I think we are trying to get our arms around the data center demand that is being forecasted by various groups, EPRI and others. And I think that we're taking the approach that somewhere in the middle, there are very aggressive targets for the growth, and then there are some that are not so aggressive. And we think somewhere in the middle is probably correct. We are in process of trying to incorporate those long-term load forecasts and how that'll change for AVA. So I think you will see in future budgets a good bit of detail on how much data center load could be coming on in our service territory.
Thank you. The second issue that's in your materials that our ad hoc group on energy affordability has been looking at is the incredible increase in distribution costs and how that impacts AVA. Obviously, it's just a fee given to us by PG&E, but when you look at the distribution of those distribution costs, the allocation of those distribution costs in your chart, most of it comes from wildfire management, either vegetation management or hardening. And we have been discussing that there are efforts by some advocates, I believe NRDC is one of them, to, we believe, properly place that charge on taxpayers rather than ratepayers, to be more progressive rather than regressive, and avoiding giving PG&E a 10% profit on something that is a social cost. Is AVA doing anything on that distribution cost issue in terms of advocacy? And how does that affect our budget? Because I saw it in your budget materials.
Yeah, and I will probably ask Todd to hop in and see if they are working on anything on that front.
That's the next item on the agenda.
So that's great. Left me off early. So I think, yeah, in essence, yes, it is concerning for us because as a rate setting, a part of our rate setting methodology, those costs that are, going to be passed on to us by PG&E, the larger they get, the harder it is on our customers. So the advocacy portion, I think, is where we can start, and good that we are going to cover that next. But certainly do appreciate the question.
Thank you. Ernie, you have the question? No, let's see. Jim was next. Then you, Ernie, if that's okay. Let's get Jim first, and then we'll go back to you. I think Jim had his hand first. Sorry, my apologies. Go ahead, please, Jim.
Well, I was going to bite my tongue about water, heat pump water heaters, because that's almost my day job, and I could go on for years on that. But the basic answer is it's really up in the air right now because South Coast declined to adopt their zero emission targets. And so it's likely that the Bay Area Air District will postpone or delay theirs. So those are still up in the air, unfortunately. But my main question, and this is to Rusty and probably Todd, what's the likelihood of PG&E and the PUC doing this all over again in next year or the year after.
Do you want me to field that one?
You can feel that, Todd. I can, mine might be wrapped in personal opinion, but go ahead.
So taking your question literally, next year, probably no chance. So this was phase one of what's currently scoped as two phases in the proceeding. But taking the sense of your question rather than the literal phrasing of it, this is just the first of what will be more than one set of changes. We do anticipate both a revisit of RA as well as RPS, probably to come into effect no sooner than 2028 rates, but this is not the end. That was the preliminary scope already set by the PC, so not giving anything away there.
So as a follow-on question for that, is there anything that AVA and the other CCAs can do to get in front of those changes? Or are those anticipated changes?
Well, we're participating in the proceeding, obviously.
But could AVA propose changes to the PUC?
We will have an opportunity to do so. Would we want to? I mean, we pretty much got what we wanted out of the Working Group 1 process.
Yeah, that was 5 years ago.
Right. So we like where we are.
But where we are is not stable.
Yeah, you're talking about trying to shift the Overton window.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Effectively.
essentially.
So, or something to that effect.
Yeah, I will say generally we try and play it straight. So we AVA, we CalCCA would not propose something simply for the sake of proposing something just to move the needle on it. Unfortunately, that disadvantages us somewhat compared to the utilities that are willing to just throw things out there. But yeah, I mean that's where we're at.
1 second. Just one clarification. You said a window. What window was that?
The Overton window.
No idea.
The concept, I forget who Overton was, a social scientist of some sort. The concept is that if you want to land at a central point, in order to get there, you have to shift the entirety of the conversation. So you push something really extreme in order to make what now seems extreme seem more moderate.
Thank you. Ernie.
This question is probably for Todd. This is a multi-part question. What do you see the timeline being for AVA, CalCCA to work its way through with the CPUC, even into litigation, where this is decided definitively yes or no? What's the timeline? Secondly, should CalCCA or AVA CalCCA win in the end, whenever that is, and get less of a PCIA increase, how much lower would it be? And thirdly, what is the timeline for having to pass a budget? And as CalCCA and AVA continue to litigate or participate in the hearings and then litigate if necessary, can we come back and adjust the budget?
Maybe we should take the last question first, and I'll punt it back to Rusty around the budget process timeline, or Jason.
Yeah, so on the budget timeline, obviously we are looking to get the budget as proposed passed now. We do have an audit that's ongoing starting in July through fall. And then when that's finalized, we will have some allocations that we want to bring back to the board. So we may come back later this year with adjustments and modifications if there is anything to modify based on PG&E's final rates that are put into a decision later this year.
As to the other timing questions, so phase one is what we're really talking about now and its impacts. And so we anticipate a decision by the PUC next week on that when it's actually mailed, starts the 30-day clock running for a rehearing. And then once the rehearings are filed, that starts the clock run, or that starts the clock running for the deemed denied period within which this is the RA market price benchmark changes. Yeah, the reform, put that in air quotes, that we're talking about right now. Right. So conceivably, then we go to the Court of Appeal. There's no set time within which they have to act. And so at that point, who knows when they will act. Meantime, the rates would go into effect. We may or may not ask for a stay. It may or may not be granted. I think the safe assumption right now is that the 2026 rates would go into effect with whatever comes out of this decision next week. So that's the first chunk of it. The second chunk of it is what we were talking about a moment ago, where changes potentially to other elements of the PCIA methodology, in addition to RA, are in play, with those changes to show up in 2028. Similarly, there would be an opportunity for rehearing and for an appeal with the same timeline, just pushed forward however many months or years.
Okay, thank you. And then, thank you, Rusty and Todd. Just to clarify for my understanding, so as AVA and CalCCA continue this fight, which I really hope that AVA and CalCCA do tooth and nail, but should it turn out that that there is some success in changing the RA price and thereby the deficit being less or the rates being less, staff can go back to the board and actually put some money into, like, say, some programs where right now you're proposing no money for the water heaters or the municipal
Yeah.
facilities. Just want to clarify, yes.
Yeah, and that's, I think as part of what I think we're calling upside scenario, that if the more moderate prices are actualized, that PG&E or something closer to what PG&E had in their ERA filing, that's the upside scenario. We kind of think that it's the base case that is going to work out to be in play here. So if the upside did materialize, yes, we would actually make adjustments to spending, planned spending and allocations to different funding levels on local development and an item like the heat pump water heaters. So.
Thank you.
So that was on slide 21, where you had the previous upside budget. That right now the proposed budget is only 10,001.9, but we have a balance from last year, $92 million in all 102. But if we have the upside, that's the full $25 million that was proposed. Just getting this up over to $117 million on the potential to fund those budgets, those items.
And I think what's important here also is to highlight, these are allocating dollars. I guess you could characterize them as future spending allocations. We have almost $100 million in the fund now. So those could be utilized for heat pump water heater support if we wanted to start down an effort that the board thought was important. We do have money already set aside to actually get started on that.
And to clarify that, do you have capacity to spend that dollars?
And that's always the rub, right? I mean, I think you'd love to spend it as quickly as you could, but it's about prioritizing what is most important and getting those off the ground. I think on the next slide shows the actual spending that is going on next year, at least planned to for right now.
Regardless of the budget, you're still looking to spend $20 million in these projects for next FY26.
Yes.
Thank you. Indra.
So, I'm not sure how to tactfully ask this question, but so I know that we're looking at the budget and we're trying to understand. I keep thinking the reason we're AVA is because we do renewable energy and we're thinking about climate change. And when I look at this budget and I keep thinking that for every time something changes, we're ending up dropping things from our local development plan, I'm thinking, what's the point? So I guess my question is, how aggressive is AVA being to defend our climate change position? And I guess the budget seems to be the place to do it. But if we can't find a way to push back on PG&E and PUC every time they want to change their rates, or it seems to me with the PCIA and with the RA, they can actually make our budget so small that we have no power to do anything. And so I guess my question is how aggressive are we being and what can we do to push back? Because it seems like we're just kind of saying, okay, you're changing the rates, we're going to go to court on these few things, but I don't hear that we're doing our own modeling in terms of what are these things being based on? We don't question what PG&E, do we know what PG&E is doing with their modeling? Do we see their modeling? So it seems like we're in a very disadvantageous position. So my question is, how aggressive are we being? And can we be, what can we do?
Yeah, no, go ahead and you want to start, Claire? I don't know what kind of response staff has, so I'll defer to Todd for a second. Do you want to respond to that? And then, because you have the floor and I can't go to the vice chair unless you defer to her, but to Todd ask the question.
I just wanted to ask Rusty, he mentioned an audit. This audit,
It's just our normal fiscal year audit. We have audited
Well-
financial statements.
well, that, we're being transparent. What about PG&E? I would really like to see numbers as to how they're justifying this. And I know we are in disagreement with their justification, but I can't see why they can't produce these numbers. And that's the audit that I want to see.
But that's more about the aggressive question. That's defining what I'm saying about being aggressive. Have we looked at all their numbers? Do we know?
So to Todd, what kind of power do we have beyond that of the rates and RAs and PCIAs and RPSs?
Yeah, so the alphabet soup, on the numbers, you can find those on PG&E's website. You won't understand them. I can guarantee you. Like,
Right.
you really need to be a utility accounting person to understand them. And we have Brian Dickman, who's extraordinarily good at this.
Well, I think Richard.
Richard McCann, I got a sense that he's an economist and I guess he worked for PUC or something. Anyway, he seemed to do his own modeling that contradicted a lot of the modeling of PG&E, was the sense I got from talking to him.
Maybe, I'm not sure what Dr. McCann has been up
But
to.
maybe could we get him on board to look at this to help us?
So we're going to pull back on that.
Okay,
That'd be a
sorry, that's
request
wrong.
for-
That's not answering the question, sorry.
Yes, we can go back to board we just want to clarify. You're asking what can we do with this budget?
Yeah, and in terms of what you can do, so we, the policy group, are preparing talking points, which I think we're going to give those to some board members, and I think they can disseminate those to various folks. And you can then, well, there's two ways that you can get in front of the PUC. You can actually show up there and make public comment on an agenda item, similar to the way that folks do here. There's essentially a state equivalent of the Brown Act, Bagley-Keene, which provides for analogous processes. There's also provision on the PUC's website to file public comment through the website. So those are both avenues that folks can, and we would certainly invite you to take advantage of those avenues to make yourself heard.
Yeah, we would like to.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think to your point, I mean, if we're spending only $20 million, but we have $100 million in the bank, then what would we recommend to push a greener future? So then they get an allocation, like they say they're reducing staff or not hiring as many staff, then should it be the other way? Bring the staff you want to bring on by execute some of these programs? I'm just sort of trying to answer the clarifying question. And before we move on to, yes.
So, two last questions for now. Again, supporting the agency and Cal CCA to fight this tooth and nail now and next year when this happens. Is it necessary to have a higher budget for litigation? And if so, I would really support throwing money. So yeah, do we need more money to get analysts and lawyers more than we have yet?
It's already in the budget.
It's in the, but you consider it handled, okay?
budget.
So
This
second,
Consultants for roadmap, is that where it is in the budget?
No.
Legal expenses said 1 million.
I'm not sure
that's
which
for the
slide you're looking
LDPP.
at, but
That's the
yeah,
LDPP.
that's just the LDPP.
okay, so you consider that you have enough resources for
Yes.
the fight, okay. Then second question is, so for both the PG&E proceedings and should it go to court, so you have the agency and you have Cal CCA fully participating. All the CCAs are composed of city councilors and county supervisors, city mayors. But would it be helpful do you feel for the cities themselves to become parties or interveners in the process to help get the decision we want moving forward?
Probably not. I think what we're looking for from electeds is letters. I don't think party status would be helpful.
Letters of support. Okay. Cynthia,
Yes.
you have a clarifying question?
Well, maybe a basic question. You talked about the banked recs, and how would they be utilized again? And I'm curious about the composition of the recs.
Yeah, we plan to apply the procured 2024 to the next 2 fiscal years. Well, there would be calendar years for the procurement period, but they will affect the next 2 budget cycles. Yeah, so we will still be procuring recs. We will just not have to procure quite as many because we already have a partial procurement from the over procurement for 24. I think if you go back to a slide that shows our power content label, let's see which
15.
slide that is.
15.
Slide 15 there. And it shows you the composition of our procurement there. 61% renewable and 33% large hydro, which, as you know, we get allocated portions of that from PG&E. But you've got the breakdown there of biomass and biogas, 10%, solar 17%, wind at 31%.
Can I just clarify? I see a very small, if I want to make sure I'm reading this chart correctly, I see a very small allocation of nuclear, and I also see, unspecified power. Am I reading that correctly?
Yes, so that's just spot market power that's unspecified as far as a resource. ACS is a component of that, which is it's renewable power from the Pacific Northwest primarily. If the nuclear, I believe we get a portion allocated from PG&E. Todd, I don't know if you have any information on that, or if maybe even Jason. But I believe that's something that, you know, we purchase power from one of our power providers, and they've specified that it came from a nuclear facility.
Says 0.5%.
Yep.
I'm not sure what that is. I'll defer to Jason.
We voted on that. There was a discussion about having nuclear in Bright Choice.
I think there's the board discussion
Yeah.
about taking the allocation from
Right.
PG&E. And
Yeah. This,
Sorry, I was speaking and didn't realize I was muted. Correction on that is that is not a purchase. That is a free allocation from PG&E as
Allocated.
approved by the board. Yeah.
Yeah,
the board
thanks.
approved it.
They did approve it.
So that's the allocation. So beyond that, the unspecified power from the 100% gets us down to 96%, which is the renewables and large hydro that is equal in that percentage. So 61.8 renewable and the large hydro 33.7, I think gets us to 96%, which is at that chart at the bottom. And they say they exceeded the goal by 15%, which is what they're allocating. So that way they only have to procure 73.5 as the target for the next 2 years. So hit the same number for 81% in 25-26. Therefore not increasing cost, but reducing it by $10 to $60 million is how I read it. Is that correct, Jason?
That is correct. And I would like to draw your attention to a slide later in the deck as well. I believe it is slide 30. It's kind of in the appendices. Yes, that slide right there. Yeah. So this is our This slide has a couple of details here in that big kind of green blue chart table on the top. The first column there is that's the state mandate for RPS, and as you can see in 24, the state required that we meet a minimum of 52%, and we had a board approved target of 71% initially, but different budget sessions have added 10% to that. So our target was elevated. And that's kind of where you see at the bottom chart, the red circle, that we have added to that 71% to get to 80 or 81%. Sorry, not the red circle. Just to the like kind of area left of it. 81% for 2024, and then the red circle shows 81% for 25 and 81% for 26 as per our board mandated and approved elevated targets. So we are exceeding the state standard by a material amount in terms of our procurement. And this procurement, this over procurement in 24, helps us meet that 3-year average.
Yes, and that's just the Bright choice, not the 100% renewable. When you add that in,
correct.
sure those
The
numbers grow
100%
up.
renewable is, as defined, 100% renewable.
And the carbon free that isn't renewable, that's hydro?
That's correct. It's either the large hydro or that small nuclear allocation.
Got it.
All right, so I wanted to see if we could transition. So we've gone through a few rounds of clarifying questions. We can open up to public comment, if that's okay with this body. And then we can come back for deliberation with the committee. Adrian, public comment?
Yes. Isla Paz, recognized for 3 minutes.
Wonderful. Thank you, Adrian. Thank you to CAC members. Would have loved to see you in person, but I think I was exposed to a very sick child at a wedding and feeling the impacts of that. But anyways, I just wanted to come and say on behalf of Local Clean Energy Alliance and a variety of other community organizations, 17 in total, that we really want to encourage AVA. We really want to encourage AVA to actively oppose the increases of the PCAA proposed by the CPUC. We think that this is really important when it comes to the long-term viability of CCAs in California and their ability to commit to the programs that reinvest in their local communities and commit to clean energy procurement, especially in light of California's climate and clean energy goals. Direct advocacy at the CPUC level will really help protect AVA's ability to offer competitive rates and prevent undue financial burdens on local communities. We also urge AVA to actively support and advocate for state legislation, such as SB 332, which is the Golden State Energy Act, and other related measures that would support the long-term success of CCAs and their constituents. AVA actively supporting legislation would lead to long-term independence from the IOU and from these sorts of processes that just make CCA, that just cement the IOU's ability to really harm CCAs and prevent them from being able to provide the energy and the programming that they want to provide for their communities. We also strongly advocate for the continued prioritization and funding of AVA's local development business plan programming. The affordability initiatives, the energy efficiency programs, community resilience, that really should be a priority, and even during periods of market volatility or financial stress. And these programs really directly serve local community needs. And AVA should be, making sure what alternative solutions there are in terms of litigation, financial management, et cetera, to be able to uphold those programs. And then finally, it would be great if AVA can establish and fund a new annual community-based organization grant fund for community organizations and their needs, which should be independent of AVA's community grants programs, and make sure that that's in collaboration with community organizations. There is precedent for such a program that is in the public letter public comment letter that Jessica Talar submitted.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
There are no further hands raised at this time.
Thank you very much. I think for our public speaker, I just want to recap a bit there about the LCA's desire plus other organizations to oppose the PCA increases, pushing for direct advocacy. State legislation, you mentioned SB 332. I think really taking out the power from the IOUs. Really, the LDBP was of importance, affordability, resilience, and community initiatives, and as well as the annual community grant fund, which I would want to get better clarity. So I'll look to Jessica's letter to understand that more. All right, so with that, can we go back to the room for deliberation? Any recommendations? Any thoughts or concerns? So come to the room and then we'll go online. I'll look for hands, recommendations. Jim?
I move that we support staff's recommendation with a note that we want to see, I'm not sure quite the right word, but aggressive actions to push back on the PCIA adjustment and the pending future phases of that. So, including legislatively.
Let me just repeat what I heard. You're looking to support the staff recommendation, see aggressive actions to push back on the PCIA adjustment and pending future phases, including legislation.
Sorry.
All right, I would go, Ernie, go ahead.
Friendly amendment. I support that. I would propose friendly amendment that should AVA, CalCCA be successful in getting, in having, oh my God, what are we calling it? The better budget,
The upside.
the upside budget, that priority would be given towards funding the LDBP with those additional revenues.
Just clarifying again, the upside budget. So if we actually have more resources that we can be successful through AVA and CCE's efforts, that we can look at the upside budget and ensure that we fund the local development business plan, maybe up to that $25 million price point that we were at before.
Yes.
I'm not sure what you're doing because I have a motion. I'm not sure, the amendment wasn't really a second, unless you're going to second it with the amendment. But do you accept this amendment? Accept the amendment. Do we have a second with the motion and the adjustment to the motion?
Yeah.
Yes?
I did want to add that,
Hold on a second. Are you adding to
he's
the?
seconding, right?
Are you? I don't know if you second or Cynthia.
Well, I will second.
Okay, Cynthia seconds this motion with the amended information provided to Jim. He nodded, so I just want to capture that. And Cynthia seconded. Now let's have a conversation or any other adjustments.
Could I just get
saw
clarification?
Mickey, but then I can go to you. All right, go ahead.
So can you remind me what page what the plan is for the upside budget?
21
Page 21?
with the local development.
I would expect that even if the CCAs are successful, it won't get rolled back all the way to the baseline. It would be some median number, so I wouldn't say that it has to go back to the upside number, but it should be readjusted to account for any success in fighting back.
I think that was the upside, wasn't it?
Well, but that doesn't clarify what Todd and his team are doing in terms of getting this, pushing back on the RA.
Well, it sounds like they are currently in the CPUC process.
And is there like a summary of what you're doing there, or is it of the process that you're undergoing? Is it because it's litigation, it's not open or?
Well, the decision is,
You mean the timing or?
No, what you're pushing back on?
Oh, all our filings are public. You can just go on the website and look at them. It's,
Okay.
it's 10 pages of greatness.
Okay. But I mean, you went through that here, right? Did you go through what you're objecting to?
No, well, partly. So if we go back to, I forget which slide it was, the one that has the bullets, we talked through it a moment ago.
Hold on.
Is it this one?
Nope, sorry, the
Page
bullets
12?
isn't super helpful. There's a bunch of substructure on it.
Oh, I remember that one, okay.
Which slide is, yeah, that's it, Jim. Slide 6, thanks.
Way back.
Yeah. That talks about the changes. And it's really the longer look back that we have the most heartburn with.
We're still in learning mode.
Yeah, we're still keeping up, yeah. Okay, so this is a proposed issue.
Yeah, it's the first of the substructure bullets there.
Slide 6, so you're fine. Your question, or you have a question? Just want to, or other
Oh,
conversation? I'll come back over here in a second. Go ahead.
Can I ask my fellow ad hoc committee people a question?
You can ask anybody whatever question you want.
So
I need 5 minutes.
with our discussion that we had with,
Okay, hold on one second. Pause.
5 minutes. For some reason, my computer.
Technical difficulties. 1 second now.
so we're taking a 5-minute break. Well,
5-minute break.
So go ahead and talk amongst yourselves.
so Jim and
not sure
Mickey,
what-
I'm just not sure that this list is addressing what our concerns with the PCIA were. You know what I'm saying? And the sort of marketing strategies and the recommendations that we had.
Right.
So that's why I'm questioning about
Not
the,
my fort.
I'm supporting what Todd and the staff are doing within the PUC process.
right, no, and I understand that. I'm just having a hard time with every time the PUC wants to do something to Ava, we just go ahead and do it, you know? and-
Well, we react to it and respond to
As
it.
we should.
Yes, and I
but-
never requested
You're fine, you're fine. Take
a
your time.
more
Take your time.
aggressive
Don't worry about it.
legislation they were support to slow down and prepare for vigorous, be more
Same
aggressive.
power supply.
But I think by saying aggressive, what we mean is Ava getting the information from PG&E that Ava needs in order to adequately support itself, like, yeah.
Well,
I mean-
read our comments. We filed a Public Records Act request in February with PUC seeking to get the information that would ultimately underlie. We knew it was coming
Okay. No, I knew you.
before we saw the staff report.
Yeah.
We have not received a single bit of data.
See, that's just it. So we're doing a budget and you didn't get the data you need.
Well, and Cal CCA did do discovery, because we can only ask for the non-confidential material. Fair enough. They haven't given us that. Cal CCA asked for all of it. They got nothing.
I think we're back.
All of which is in the comments, right? It's part of making the case for why what's happening here is not fair.
Well, and I mean,
That was a quick recovery, man. That was bam, bam, right on.
I keep going back to Ava's
sure
doing a
what
good thing, we're doing the right thing, but PG&E we're really at the behest of PG&E. I guess I have to live with that.
Well, it's the commission, right?
Are we back on? Are we?
Are you back?
That's what
Are
I
we
think, I
back?
think so too. I think so
I don't know.
too.
Can we
Yeah,
confirm that we're back?
yeah, we're back. Hello? Can you hear us?
Rusty, can you hear us?
Okay, good.
Great. Okay.
Yep.
We can't hear you.
Yes, he was on mute.
Oh, okay.
So,
For purposes of our process at the moment, I think we have a motion
Yes.
as amended.
Yes.
And I would just like to say, number one, I feel like Ava's doing a great job within the constraints
Oh, yes,
it finds itself.
absolutely.
And I would like to support this and call for the question.
But we are still, I mean, we don't have our chair right now, so I think we're in recess right now.
The chair.
Well, you asked if we were back, we said yes, so I thought we were back.
Our chair isn't back.
Our chair isn't back.
I'm going to further define aggressive.
Oh,
In the amendment.
Well, our vice chair is
I would
back.
like to add to
So-
yours.
Yeah.
That they look at alternative methods of modeling the PCIA and can get McCann's model, essentially.
Right. And that's what definition of aggressive. We need to define aggressive. That's one definition.
I'm just asking whether that's part of a motion having to do with recommending approval of a budget, or that's a different topic.
No, I think we're amending
The
what he,
amendments.
we're amending his, because he said aggressive,
I
said
got it,
aggressive actions to push back.
I got it, okay. I'll shut up.
No, no, Peter, you're fine.
Well, I mean, Peter, you.
Is this for us?
That, yeah, that came from the chair. Well,
Pending,
Want some of that for everybody?
Did you get one?
I did not, but that's okay. I'm not a member of the
Not?
committee.
Then you're gonna get one.
so,
Thank you very much.
On this Jim Hill one.
Excuse me, sorry. Well, we're coming back to order. It's about 7, we had to take a quick technical break. We're back in order. I think you had the floor, Indira.
we were just thinking to define the word aggressive in your proposal. And
So we're gonna go
Mickey
from
said
order?
to adding alternate methods of modeling. I don't know if that's too prescriptive. And information from the PUC, if we could get it.
I'm going to ask to have the motion repeated.
I wrote it down in mine.
I move that the CAC support the staff recommendation with the addition to aggressively explore all options to defend AVA against the PCIA readjustment and further phases of potential readjustments, including legislatively. I give you enough room?
I think that,
Is that too prescriptive?
And the friendly amendment was, should there be success in that, that those fundings be prioritized towards the LDBP programs?
making it whole for the $25 million.
I will second that if you want me to.
1 second.
Or did you
It
want
was
to say-
Cynthia's second.
Cynthia, so you already.
Second, are you okay with the adjustment, the amendments,
Yes.
the recap? Okay.
And
Yes.
Was Member did Member Balkison second?
Cynthia.
No, you are the second for both the,
We only have one
the
motion.
motion and the friendly amendment.
Yes, so we have the original motion, we just asked, I asked her for restatement. And then, Mr. Member Pacheco has actually added the amendment from before, clarifying. Cynthia second, so we have the motion on the table, the first and second, to support staff recommendation, adding the aggressiveness to defend AVA against that PCIA readjustment. Can I clarify what, Todd, is that the word we're using, readjustment or reform?
I think reform with air quotes is our preferred nomenclature.
All right, reform with air quotes, got it. And then if it's successful, further fund the local development business plan up to $25 million, which is where we're at with the upside budget. Okay, other conversations, let me see, are, good? Indira, good? Peter? Jim, yes? 1 second, he's calling the question, want to check in online with our Zoomers? Thumbs up, okay? All right, we are going to call the question.
Great, thank you. Member Landry,
Yes.
Member Weiner,
Yes.
Member Balkison,
Yes.
Member Stevenson,
Yes.
Member Swaminathan,
Yes.
Member Pacheco,
Yes.
Member Harper,
Yes.
Member Lutz,
Yes.
Vice Chair Souza,
Yes.
Chair Hernandez.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
All right, then, since we just took a break, unless we need another break, are we okay to keep going? All right, it's about almost 8 o'clock. We'll move on to the next item, which is the understanding the drivers of PG&E rate and cost growth. Is the information item presented by the policy team. And I'll lead it over to Todd.
Thanks, and I'm going to pass the baton to a couple of my team members who've been plugging away at the numbers here to understand why it is that we have been seeing such striking rate increases over the past several years. And by way of prefacing what they're about to show you here, affordability means different things depending on the context. So for most normal people, it means what is my monthly amount paid to the utility. But it can mean different things for a utility. For example, it can mean what's happening with their costs or what's happening with their rates, and those things don't necessarily move together. So the task that we've undertaken here was to essentially work back. Okay, bills are going up. Why are bills going up? Well, rates are going up. Why are rates going up? Well, costs are going up, is essentially the bottom line. Well, which costs are going up and why? And so having followed that chain backwards, we then started to carry it forward. And the focus of this presentation is going to be on what costs are going up and why, and principally on the PG&E side of the ledger for reasons that you are about to hear. So with that, let me pass it over to Michael and Claire to take us through the deck.
Thank you, Todd. Hi, everybody. My name is Michael Kudos. I am a senior regulatory and data analyst. I'm joined by my colleague Claire Hong, a regulatory analyst too. Could we move to the next slide, please? Wonderful. So we thought it would be helpful to preface some of the cost analysis by looking at energy consumption in PG&E service territory. The reason being that if you look at a electric rate, what is it? It's dollars per kilowatt hour, or the amount of money you're spending per each unit of electricity you're consuming. What can affect electricity rates? Either the dollars, the total costs that the utility has to recover, or the kilowatt hours, the units of electricity over which they are selling those things. And as the denominator grows, as they sell more energy, rates that can put downward pressure on rates. Conversely, if people are using less energy, that could put upward pressure on rates. So as you can see here with the orange line at the top, energy consumption has remained on the whole fairly constant since about 2012. This is largely due to energy efficiency measures that California has been pursuing with high priority. There's a little bit of nuance here. The light blue line at the bottom, apologies, I'm not sure if that perfectly shows up on this screen in there, not sure how the contrast is, but that is self-generation, largely behind the meter solar. You can see that that's been going up as sales to end users, which is what the utility is selling to customers, has been going down. So those are about equally offsetting each other for the net effect of relatively constant energy consumption over the study period. So that means we're not going to be seeing significant upwards or downwards pressure on rates from load growth or load degrowth. And it is some useful prefacing for looking at the costs. Next slide, please. All right. So here we're looking at the volumetric electric rate, again, dollars per kilowatt hour, normalized to, or adjusted for inflation to 2024 dollars across 4 different customer classes. And then we also have the average of those customer classes. As you can see, rates have been gradually outpacing inflation from 2012 to 2020, starting to increase a bit more rapidly around 2021. We did see a moderate year-over-year.
I have a quick clarifying question. Is this a customer's total electricity bill per kilowatt hour? Because
Oh, the tiers.
no, not tiers, because part of it is, when I look at my bill, there's clearly a generation part that's from Ava, and then transmission and distribution, and that's from PG&E.
Yeah, great
So
question.
is this everything, or just the generation, or just the transmission and distribution?
This slide is everything. In 2 slides, we will have a breakdown of those components. So
Okay.
stealing the thunder a little bit there. No, it's a great question. And last thing here is you can see the rate changes over this time period have been pretty consistent across customer classes, although the rates themselves do differ depending on whether you're, say, a residential customer, a commercial customer, so on and so forth.
Another clarifying question. Is this just for all California customers, or is it for AVA customers? Is it for PG&E customers?
Here we are looking at PG&E bundled customers. So this would not include the AVA Bright Choice discount.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we're looking at them as a proxy for unbundled customers in this case.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Generally speaking, we're looking at PG&E bundled customers in this analysis. No other IOUs. Unless there's any other questions on that, let's go to the next slide. So here we are looking at the balance of PG&E's capital accounts. That is a proxy for the total amount of capital costs they have left to be recovered. Capital costs are things like investments in transmission lines, in generation assets, the power plants themselves, distribution assets, as opposed to operating costs like maintenance or labor, that sort of thing. The year-over-year change that you see here, for example, you see distribution having a linear increase, a quite striking linear increase above inflation over this time period. That reflects costs they're adding to the rate base by purchasing new assets or repowering assets, that sort of thing, as well as reductions from the rate base from amounts they're recovering from customers. So if you see the line going up, that means they are adding more to the rate base than they are recovering from customers year over year. It doesn't mean that in any one year they're going to have to recover, say in 2023, $45 billion. That's just the total amount they have to recover. Typically, these costs are recovered over the lifetime of the asset. So if you have a transmission line that lasts, say, 20 years, just for illustrative example, you're going to recover its total cost divided by 20 each year. As I mentioned, there's a quite striking distribution here, both in terms of the magnitude of costs. They're far higher than their generation or transmission assets and in the linear growth of the period. Transmission also sees linear growth here, but is of a smaller magnitude. Generation is a bit more flat over this period. And with that, I will hand it to Claire.
Thank you, Michael. Let's go to the next slide. So shifting back to rates, this is a plot showing bundled residential non-care customers, which is sort of the most representative of an AVA customer. Obviously here, when we're breaking down into the subcomponents, we see generation, distribution, transmission, public purpose programs, and everything else we've grouped into other. And obviously the generation here doesn't reflect that Bright Choice discount. This is a PG&E customer's generation rate. But the most striking thing we see is the spike in distribution rates between 2023 and 2024, which I think drew a lot of people's attention to the affordability crisis and sort of what's underlying that and what's generating it. Just noting that the generation rate is also increasing along with distribution, both outpacing inflation. To note, also, public purpose programs is relatively constant, which encompasses those like state incentive programs and low income programs that often get a lot of flack.
Can I ask a question? It says here bundled residential non-care. So the care is not included here, is that right?
This is the rate for non-care customers. However, non-care customers are paying into sort of like the care discount.
Thank you.
If no further questions, let's move to the next slide. So to further investigate that big spike in distribution costs, we turned to PG&E's general rate case, or GRC, and we compared the distribution costs approved between the previous cycle of the GRC, which is the 2020 cycle, with the 2023 cycle, which is the most recent one. Yeah, with some nuance, we're in the process of the 2027, I believe, cycle. But this is the one with the most complete data. So this plot is showing that the average annual costs approved between the two cycles increased by 1.8 billion, which is a 46% increase. And that's largely attributed to increases in vegetation management, which is that dark green wedge. It might appear sort of black on the projector screen, as well as new wildfire cost categories, which are wildfire system hardening in pink, which is including undergrounding as well as overhead hardening, and the other wildfire risk mitigations, which is in dark blue. Sorry, I think the screen share just.
Right.
All right, it's back. Just one thing to note is that inconsistent cost categorization between the two GRC cycles made direct comparison a bit difficult. So for example, the brighter blue at the bottom, overhead and underground asset management, decreased pretty significantly between the 2 years. And that's likely, our best guess is that much of that moved into the wildfire system hardening, because that's sort of the overhead hardening and the undergrounding of distribution lines. And another thing to note is that these figures don't include anything related to like increased insurance premiums to hedge against wildfire risks, which are recovered by ratepayers but are not considered distribution costs. Any questions on this slide?
Has there been an independent audit of these, both of the costs and the actual performance?
That's a great question. I don't think there's been an audit. So in the GRC process, there's room for parties to contest the costs proposed by PG&E. And that's actually, well, I'll get to it, but that's one of our main takeaways, is that even though that's part of the process, it's pretty difficult for parties to contest the costs, and anything that's uncontested, basically the CPUC will approve it as is. So I don't know about like an after the fact audit, but yeah, there is a process for contesting costs that are proposed by PG&E.
Can I ask also, what is other? What would you say is other? Oh, I'm sorry.
That's a great question. That is, I can't really speak to the specifics of what's in that, but it was like, it's a small enough category that we felt it didn't make sense to list out each of the line items.
What are some examples?
I can get back to you on that as soon as I'm wrapped up with this.
A couple things that come to mind were like billing system upgrades, or sorry, not billing system, but like meter upgrades, some of the things that tie into the billing system.
Thank you.
Yeah, no,
Various other upgrades to the system.
Thank you. Yeah, I was going to ask about the other, because it looks like it more than tripled, almost quadrupled. So I was just curious what the largest, when you look at this or explain this later, what the largest drivers are of other quadrupling.
Yeah, I can get some specifics on that right after we wrap up this presentation.
Thank you.
Please go ahead.
Great slides.
All right, next slide then. So if we're breaking down specifically the wildfire related costs in the 2023 GRC, we find that the majority of those expenses are vegetarian management, which is an ongoing annual expense, followed by undergrounding, which is a capital expense which would be recovered from ratepayers over the lifetime of that undergrounded asset, which is typically decades. And vegetation management and undergrounding make up the, far outweigh the rest of the other mitigation methods, which include overhead hardening and enhanced power line safety settings, which is like fast trip settings, increasing the sensitivity of the equipment that would trigger an outage. Yeah. Any questions on this slide?
It's a question that I'm not expecting you to answer back on that slide. Is why is, well, vegetation management, it seems like they increased it because they weren't doing a good job. Is there, and that sort of relates to the previous question I had was, has anybody checked if they're performing these jobs or if they're just claiming they've done them and charging us for it?
Yeah, it's hard to say exactly why the vegetation management increased. I think one of the things that PG&E is trying to do is sort of eliminate the risk of wildfires in the first place. So really doubling down on tree trimming, which is vegetation management, making sure that there's nothing to ignite, and then also ramping up heavily on the undergrounding part of it, which is almost completely eliminating risk of wildfires, because if the line is underground, it's not going to spark a fire.
I can maybe add some texture to this. I can't resist. Somebody asked earlier whether there were evaluations of the effectiveness of some of these measures. There is some literature on this. There's in particular a paper out of Berkeley that looks at the cost effectiveness and general effectiveness of these measures in reducing ignitions. And I just find it very interesting that the cost effectiveness almost completely inversely correlates with what they're spending the most money on here. Vegetation management being the least, then undergrounding, then overhead hardening, most cost effective being enhanced power line safety settings. There's some nuance there. You can't underground everything all at once. You can't overhead harden everything all at once. So in the interim, stepping up vegetation management really aligns with PG&E's. They're going all in on just completely eliminating wildfire risk. You can, have the affordability debate within that. And you can't just constantly be turning everybody's power off with enhanced power line safety settings. But yes, there has been some evaluation of those measures.
Peter, you have a question?
Yeah, I live in a neighborhood where PG&E spent a lot of money on vegetation management, mainly cutting down eucalyptus trees. I live in Berkeley. The Berkeley Fire Department has a program to do that too. But Berkeley Fire Department does not charge a 10% profit. If you go back 30 years, the PUC was always looking negatively at IOU plans for more transmission because they knew that was a profit center. Everything they do becomes a profit center. And for the literature I've seen is that, as you say, vegetation management is one of the least effective things. Undergrounding of distribution lines, which they're doing some of, is also considered to be one of the least effective. What's most effective is undergrounding of high voltage lines, because those are usually in areas where fire is not caught until it's really blossomed. Whereas in urban neighborhoods, if you have a distribution line that sparks, it's caught within 3 to 4 minutes. And the fire department is usually much closer. So I'm surprised that AVA and other CCAs have not challenged more the PG&E budget for vegetation management and undergrounding to make sure it is cost effective. And in many cases, especially with vegetation management and sometimes with undergrounding, but mostly vegetation management, the issue is a social cost involving cities, land use planning, and is more appropriately a municipal expense rather than one that PG&E and ratepayers should bear on a regressive taxation basis.
Yeah, a lot of good points there. One qualification. So the IOUs make their rate of return on capital investments. Vegetation management is classified as an operational expense. So they're definitely making that 6 to 10% on the undergrounding here, the overhead hardening. Vegetation management, I do not believe they have a rate of return on that.
All right, thank you. And so an expense that it's regressive in terms of ratepayer versus taxpayer.
Yeah, definitely agreed. I think it's hard as AVA to push back on that, because you don't want to be appearing as like allowing the state to have higher fire risk, right? Because the wildfires are so devastating. So it just
Understood.
Davis has a hand up.
All right, I can't see. Thank you. Please.
Hi, thank you. I was curious for the public safety power shutoff. Sorry if I missed this, but did you get any clarity around how they budget for that? Is it, I mean, it's $500 million to turn the power off, or are they looking at like lost or like economic impacts of that? It seems like some complex set of modeling if it's the latter, but just kind of curious what's kind of baked into that number.
Yeah, it's really difficult to sort of tease out what goes into the values. I would guess that some of that outage, like lost revenue, might be reflected in, are the slides back? The next bar over on the slide, public safety power shutoff, I would guess that some of those lost revenues might be reflected there, but I can't say for sure.
Thank you.
Okay, if no further questions, let's move to the next slide. So just takeaways on our analysis here. They're sort of twofold. On the rates and cost side, the big picture is that the frog has been boiling. That's what we've been saying here, which is that the generation, transmission, and distribution costs and rates have been outpacing inflation for over a decade, right? So it's not a recent issue, but what sort of brought our attention to it is that the distribution rates spiked between 2023 and 2024, largely due to wildfire spending, which we verified by looking at PG&E's GRCs and seeing that that distribution spending increased by almost 50%. And lastly, on that side, the rates will likely continue to rise due to those rising capital account balances, and especially for distribution and transmission assets. The second part of these takeaways is, as Michael and I were working on this project, we found several improvements to the cost approval process in general. First one being that it should be much easier for the public to understand and interrogate costs and rates. In looking at the GRCs, we found that a lot of the costs that were found reasonable or approved by the CPUC were not listed in the GRC decision conclusions of law, which is a process error. And a lot of those costs that are approved are not directly stated in the decision. And instead, if you want to track them down, you've got to go search through pages and pages and pages of testimony or exhibits, just making it really, really hard for somebody like a layperson to know what these costs are. The second thing here is that a significant portion of the costs are uncontested by other parties, and those sort of flow through just approved as is by the CPUC. One pretty good example of that, I mean, I actually don't remember if these were specifically uncontested, but in the 2023 GRC, the CPUC basically gave PG&E free rein to like try out undergrounding as a new method of wildfire prevention. They specifically stated that like PG&E is going to try this out, see how well it works, and we approve the amount of money that they requested. So, you know, they're like the CPUC is doing their job, but I think the whole process as a whole lacks a bit of scrutiny. All right, any questions remaining on this?
Do you have recommendations? May I ask?
We don't have any specific recommendations as of now. Again, like I said, it's kind of hard as ABA to push back on specifically wildfire related costs at PG&E. But I think having this sort of tracking process in ABA is something we're going to incorporate into our advocacy moving forward.
I would disagree that, yes, you can't probably push back on cost, but you want to have reasonable costs. Wouldn't that be sort of the takeaway from this and sort of validated and transparent? And
If I may.
yes, please.
So what we found looking at this was that the areas that seem the ripest for challenge are not on Ava's side of the bill. And obviously we have a general interest in protecting our customers, but we have a pretty full plate just keeping state agencies from killing us. And so as a matter of sort of resource allocation, we try and stay in our lane, which is the generation side of the bill. That said, given the magnitude of the increase that we've seen recently, we definitely wanted to dig into them and understand them and see where we might be able to be helpful. And so our expectation is that we will take variations on this presentation. We kind of gave you guys the high level. There's more detail on various elements of these to our electeds at some point, and hopefully that will inform what they're doing in the legislative process. I think you guys put your finger on a number of the big takeaways here, though, which is that a lot of the costs here that are spiking go unexamined. And there are elements of the PUC, the Public Advocate's Office, there are third-party stakeholders like TURN whose business it is to examine those who we would like to see do better. Similarly, the PUC has a woefully understaffed and underfunded auditing arm, and I'm in print from 10 years ago urging them to expand that for precisely this reason. So there are things that we're going to do, but generally I would not see us, AVA, getting heavily involved in, say, doing that analysis in a GRC. Too far outside our lane.
Yes, Mickey, Vice Chair.
Thank you. Thank you so much for all of these numbers. And we are in agreement. We, in the ad hocs, we have been examining and asking the very same questions. The one thing that, and I really love your process improvements. They're very well thought out, well stated. I would include that we are not alone. There are, what, 9 other CCAs? Is that right? How many?
26 statewide at last count.
Okay, and I believe that there is strength in numbers, and everybody's probably looking at the same thing right now. And we should collaborate as well. So as part of the process improvements, reaching out to counterparts, we would be happy to help in any way in looking at the community for help and organizing. So I just want to put that out there that we are not alone and you are not alone in this battle for survival.
But as Todd was saying, this does not directly show up in AVA's, the extra costs on the ratepayers don't show up on AVA's side of the books.
That's right. They don't show up on our side of the bill. We obviously have an institutional interest on our electrification activities because it does make electricity more expensive, which is a problem. But that said, given our staffing levels, we don't see ourselves as trying to fill the void that is being left by the Public Advocate's Office or TURN or the others who really have it as their business to be looking at this stuff.
But part of AVA's constitution talks about the protection of consumers. So this is in our interest, I would imagine.
Would it, would it make sense to have I don't know, how to work with TURN or as Cal CCA and spread it across all the California CCAs in the sense that all the CCA customers are seeing these sorts of rate increases on the distribution particularly. And I understand that you guys are swamped and that there's bigger fires to fight right now, but is this something that there could be some way of spreading it out and taking it a more proactive stance to defend AVA customers and other CCA customers? And PG&E customers for that point.
Well, I mean, if the Public Advocate's Office isn't pushing back and the CPUC isn't pushing back, Are there other entities in addition to the CCAs that we could maybe build a coalition with to push back? I mean, I understand that maybe that's not just Ava's issue, but I'm wondering who is pushing back if Ava isn't? I guess that's my question. Who does?
If I might,
Or you can.
thanks. Yeah. So we presented a version of this at the CalCCA conference to our colleagues, and we participate in an affordability proceeding at the CPUC. We are, coordinating with other CCAs. We're talking about these things, and I think we certainly are considering, targeted interventions where we have the resources, where there might be a high impact. I don't want to give the sense that we're completely obviating, any and all focus on this. But as Todd's saying, hard to completely scale up to the capacity you might need to do some of those full.
And if I might add to, even if we're not pushing back directly on, for example, PG&E's GRC, we are planning to incorporate this into, for example, our legislative advocacy for the next year's legislative cycle. So this sort of analysis is going to inform our advocacy. It might not be directly through contesting PG&E's GRC.
I just want to say that I think you've done an excellent job, and thank you for this presentation.
Yes.
I see a hand up from Shiva.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Yes, I think several of my questions have been raised by other commissioners, but thanks, Michael and Claire, for the analysis. So my pointed question is, has there been effort to have CalCCA take this on as a work stream or a business process to make it a part of their charter to do this intervention work on a regular fashion?
Well, by this, if you mean participate in GRCs, yes, CalCCA does do that. So historically, going back 2 GRC cycles, the various CCAs within a given utility's footprint would band together in what we called the joint CCAs and carry that forward as an individual group. Starting with the most recent GRC cycle, CalCCA has taken that on. The idea is to get some consistency across the state on similar issues so that we see similar treatment. That said, again, CalCCA, as with the individual CCAs, is focused on the things that are of the most direct impact on CCAs. So things like access to funds for programs, for example, that might be showing up in the GRC, or in phase 2 of the GRC's rate setting, which obviously impacts our rates directly. That, I think, is different from, again, trying to take on this broader role of ratepayer advocate and, should PG&E have spent that much on that substation? Those kinds of questions are outside their remit.
CalCCA also participates, or they host a affordability team. There's an equity team where they coordinate within themselves and across CCAs on these issues in more indirect ways as well.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, personally, I am okay financially. My daughter, however, reported to me she had to put her last bill on her credit card. So this is affecting people on a large basis. So it needs to be done. Somebody needs to do it. And I can help my daughter, but I can't help the rest of California.
I would just add some comments. I'm just trying to look up the JPA, and it just talks about ensuring that the member jurisdictions work together to ensure competitive rates and consumer protections. The JPA prioritizes keeping electricity rates competitive with PG&E while offering differentiated energy options, and really focuses on engaging state legislative efforts to support policies that benefit customers, not AVA customers, not PG&E customers, customers. So I think that's pretty important that we work towards. Also, we have our public comments, public meetings, but we need to really push this forward and see how we can work with our board members, state legislators, and push this forward to organizations like LCEA and others, and the CalCCA, to really bring more transparency, visibility to what is being charged. And we can't depend on staff because staff has so much bandwidth, as we understand, but this was formed by the community, hence community energy. We just got to keep going in that direction. I think since our vice chair will be presenting this item on Wednesday, if you can make it, be great to speak to the item that we heard today with your own passion.
Yeah, I have nothing better to do.
Thank you. With that, do we have any other comments before we move on to the next item? Or we want to take public comment? Okay. Thank you.
There are no hands raised at this time.
Oh, all right, then thank you very much for checking that box. With that, we'll go next to item, which is the ad hoc reports. I believe that's what it is. Yes, ad hoc committee updates. Indra.
Well, until I heard Todd's presentation, I thought I had more to say. So we met on June 5th. We met with Richard McCann, a partner in M Cubed, and he's an economist and a policy consultant. And we met to get his input on why PG&E rates keep rising. And he immediately focused on power charge and difference adjustments. So we talked quite a bit about that. And he really felt that we should try to, when I said drop out, what I really meant, or what he said, was that we should try to do the buyout. And he talked a lot about the vintage years used to determine the PCIA rates. And he said that they were, which is typically the year the community or customer made the decision to switch to the CCA. And the PCIA included components like resource adequacy, we've discussed, energy indexes, and the RPS. And then he thought that that was a really crucial factor for CCAs because it impacts our abilities to have competitive rates. And he said that the PCIA continues until the last energy contract within that vintage year expires. And he felt that when he said inverted, he felt that we are at that point where a lot of the energy year contracts had expired, and this would be a good opportunity to do a buyout, that it would be the, I guess, most affordable. Jim and Mickey, correct me if I'm saying something wrong. And he thought that the CCA, he really emphasized how much he thought the CCAs are in danger, and which we saw in the budget. I think we saw that, you know, we're having to pay for it, our recs, to save our staff, which we want to keep. And the other thing he said that was really interesting, I guess a lot of the CCAs used to do a lot more aggressive media campaigns and public relations campaigns. And that was a recommendation that AVA should pursue a more aggressive public relations strategy to counter the CPUs and the IOUs flooding. He called it flooding the zone, which was harming the CCAs. We have all heard a lot about flooding the zone, but he felt that AVA wasn't doing enough of that, talking about what's going on. And I think with the budget, we do have an opportunity to talk in a way that people can understand. And I do understand when Todd said, you won't understand it, because when Richard McCann talked, to quote Jim, it was like a fire hose of information, because it was so much information. And so also he mentioned that he thinks PG&E is double counting because of the PCIA, and that there was a need to audit this double counting of distribution costs. Specifically, he said distribution costs. And I think I sent it around, but he has a blog where he talked about the PCIA and his opinion, and I can share that again if we don't. He also thought that it would be really good to get legislation, talk to legislature about ending PCIA. So that's where the ending comes from. And then he mentioned something about getting data from NewGen, that NewGen was an organization that would have the information. I don't know, Todd, if you've already seen the NewGen data, probably.
There are experts in the ERA proceedings.
Okay, cool. And that he really said that the CCAs need to work together to protect themselves. And so I sent out information about, like, you know, why have things changed? What is the PCIA and how it's calculated? But those are pretty much the points. Is there anything I missed on?
Well, other than Dr. McCann had so kindly offered this information pro bono, and that he has offered for more assistance and to help us out in the future and do other meetings for us. He seems passionate, and that's it. I don't think he's operating on in any way for profit. I think he really wants to help, and I think we should take advantage of it.
The other thing I wanted to say is that we're meeting with Kevin Bailey of the Utility Reform, is that what it's called? Turn, on the 24th of June to talk about the same subject.
We
And
could probably send him Claire and Michael's presentation.
Yeah, that's a great idea. We'll send that before, if that's okay. We'll send that before. But I want to also just thank Jim and Mickey, Peter, and Davis for your help on this, because Jim's been in touch with all these people and setting up meetings, which is amazing. So I think, there's so much to learn, and we're doing our best to come up to speed.
Thank you. Do you have a recommendation, something we should bring forward to the board at the moment, or not yet? Or a proposal of some sort?
Well, I think that would be really the board may want to just revisit the buyout of the PCIA. I think that's one thing, and I think the second thing is to see about a public relations campaign. Was it, you said, Jim, the name of the, was it Marin had a really good public relations?
No, Richard was saying that at the beginning, they had a really.
And it was Marin, right?
It was Marin.
Yeah.
When they were starting up, because they were the first CCA, so they had to do a lot of public explaining and
Yeah.
promotion.
So that would be a recommendation, is to look
back
at what Marin did when they were getting started up, and I think to revisit, because I think there's a lot of churning going around and flooding the zone with information, and we're talking a lot about rates increasing, and I think that AVA needs to, my bias is because this is renewable energy and helping climate change and helping the community, we need to push back, and if we don't do it legislatively, at least with a PR campaign. So that's another recommendation, I think. Is there anything else? And get Richard McCann to come talk to us.
Just a friendly amendment. Is there a way for our advisory committee members to talk to MCEs, Bring Clean Energies, advisory committee members, and find out?
Yeah, call them up.
Yeah, we can. We've been doing it. Jim's been doing it.
I haven't called up the other CCA advisory committees, but.
MCE is the first, right?
Right.
And they're probably somewhat sophisticated. I think expressing some of our frustration to them might be interesting to see what they're doing and how they operate.
We should.
Yeah.
That was something that was discussed.
He gave us the names.
He gave us
to
some
talk to.
names, yeah.
Okay.
And the other thing that he mentioned too was that our staff here at AVA talked to the other CCAs, which sounds like Todd's already been doing, so that's why I didn't say that again. But that would be another recommendation, is that the Energy Affordability Committee speak to MCE.
Okay.
So that, this is not just about hitting our bottom line. This is about AVA looking like heroes in this. If we could lead with other CCAs, we could look like heroes in comparison with PG&E. And that's our advantage at this moment, at least, until PG&E completely decimates us. But maybe I shouldn't have said it that drastically, but our advantage is the public does not trust PG&E, and there's good reason for that. And we should take advantage of that, and we should look like this is our first step in helping. And this would be a great public purpose campaign to promote AVA.
So I think part of it is just getting a roadmap proposal together, and part of it working with staff, understanding. I mean, it seems like Todd has a lot of insight to what's worked, what's not worked in the past, and if he was able to share some more of his time and validate what you're hearing against what he's saying, what he's done, and syncing up what's possible, and then getting a budget to staff to bring in, to board, to bring in more resources. Like, what does that look like on an ad hoc consulting basis, separating from legal legislation, just consulting, looking at supporting what we want to see beyond what staff's capable of doing right now. What does that look like? What's the timeline look like? And then we present to the board directors to give us the approval to do that. It goes back to the workflow we talked about. What is it that we need or want? We get a sense of what we need or want, and then we create the proposal and we present it to the board as sort of a standalone item for their approval.
Well, that would be like a product we could do, right? Come up with a plan of what, but Todd, would it be a trouble for us to talk to you about the background and sort of see where you've been? And I know we'll never catch up, but.
Yeah, it's a heavy lift. Let's table that for the moment. Like I said, we're expecting to circulate some talking points on this in the not too distant future, which may get you where you need to be without having to.
Before our next meeting?
I'm hoping before the PUC decision. Yeah, so soon, without you having to do chapter and verse on this.
Is it appropriate for CAC members to do public comments to the CPUC and PG&E on?
Or, I mean, on your own behalf.
Right. Well,
course.
as an ad hoc, we do it?
Our personal.
Our own person, got it.
Unless you have proper board direction and CAC approval to speak on behalf of the CAC or the board, but mostly as an advisory, I don't think we have any formal standing. Only through the board directors and through a measure of the board to have a talking point, have like maybe the chair present comment on behalf of the board of directors. But generally speaking, it's only on your own behalf. You can say, I'm also this person, but I'm here speaking on my own behalf. So presenting who you are, what you do, but you're really on your own. So that creates a sense of like, I know what I'm talking about. I'm here because of me, because I'm passionate, and I'm tired of what I'm seeing. I'm sick and tired of this. So that's would be my format. I'm not going to take it anymore. Exactly. But thank you very much. This is very good. And I think we can still work towards a package of something that might work. And then when Todd's able to deliver what they're presenting next, then we can incorporate that into the proposal and see what the gap is.
Awesome.
And that gap might be something we need to present and push for as an advisory committee to the board. That's how I see it. All right, do we have questions? Yes, I do. Excuse me. So let's see, Cynthia, and then I'll go to Davis.
Yes, another
gets late.
excellent presentation. I just wonder,
If you move your microphone,
Oh,
thank you.
yes, I said that another excellent presentation by the ad hoc committee. I just, I would like to see a presentation, is it Mr. McCain, am I saying his name?
Richard McCann.
Yeah,
Dr. Richard.
McCann, rather. Because I think there's an educational, piece for the board and also the members of the CAC that are not part of your ad hoc committee.
I can send that blog that he sent us, and he has a regular blog too that talks about these subjects.
I found the word authentic.
Authentic. So I can send that. He talked specifically about the PCA.
Yeah, I'd like to see some of these people. Can they make a presentation either at the board or at the CAC
Could we tape it?
level?
The Zoom?
Did we tape it?
No, could we do that?
Yeah.
I mean, would that be appropriate? We could try to tape these Zoom calls we have, if they're okay with it.
I think you could share them. The only challenge in this environment is having public comment. And then he would be limited 3 minutes.
Okay.
Unless he had a presentation, but then we have to work with staff to present that information. So we have to look through Kate, see how you could help us with that. But I'm not sure if that's out of scope. Bring a speaker.
Several 3 minutes.
No, you speak to it.
as CAC chair, I'm happy to chat with you about that.
Okay, so let's figure out what kind of proposal. We can share information about the blog, see if it'd be willing to speak to us about PCIA, not stepping on Todd's toes, but rather understanding what complementary elements are there.
And we could try to do it first with Kevin Bailey.
Okay.
Yeah,
Before the 24th, if that's
What,
possible.
what I'm kind of envisioning is that if we want to synthesize what the message is and maybe make it 10 minutes. And I think he could synthesize quite a good message and proposals to move forward with working with the PCIA problem. And at that point, that could open a door to further discussion.
Can I just also add to that is, Todd, do you know Dr. McCann?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, so do you talk to him?
Not regularly, no, but I certainly have worked with him in the past.
Because it'd be good to put Todd in touch with him, I think.
Yeah, I think if you guys want to bring him forward based on your conversation with him, sounds like you can do that through Kate.
Okay.
You can look at it at your leisure.
I would just note, you mentioned Turn. You previously talked about Turn in the context of affordability generally. I note that Turn is not a friend to CCAs on PCIA.
Do you know what position they took on the PCIA change?
They liked the PD so much they didn't file comments.
We'll have to ask Kevin about that.
All right, we're coming closer to 9 o'clock. Just want to see if we have any other information
You have
that we have.
other-
Oh, yes, we have. Thank you. Member
Yes,
Harper.
I have a whole LDBP.
Oh, okay.
presentation.
Let's LDBP.
And Davis has.
Yeah, so Davis, you have a question.
Davis is part of the committee.
Oh,
Really quickly, I was waiting about 15, 20 minutes. I was wanted to add real quick to what Indira was mentioning about Richard McKen's argument to give a little bit more texture. He was saying that the generation rates over the last 5 years that PG&E had went from 10 cents to 17 cents. And he was saying that the ceiling on their prices should have been closer to 10 because they have so many renewable contracts at that rate. And so when it comes to calculating the PCIA, which they claim they need, to ensure bundled customers don't have excessive costs, he was concerned that they're drastically inflating their generation costs. That was wanted to chime in with that, and also supportive of all the dialogue and finding ways to advocate together on this. Thanks.
And thank you,
Thanks,
Davis.
Davis.
Yeah, and if you see me making you wait longer than 2 or 3 minutes, just say, Chair. So I don't
Let
mind
you
that.
talk, Davis.
Yes, and then I think, does Dr. McKenna have more support for that information? I'm assuming. You already-
Yeah, he said he did. He said he'd done modeling around it.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think we're in transition to Jim's LDVP conversation. I know we're running out of time, but please, it's a part of the same ad hoc, 2 different ad hoc
I'll
committee.
try to be quick. If you could pull up C7, item 7, I'll talk to it briefly. Yes, that one. Before I get to that, some of them, we've been, as the
Microphone closer to you, please. Thank you.
As the LDBP ad hoc, we've been talking to several people and are preparing to talk to more. Some major concerns we've been hearing are a perceived lack of transparency about local development at AVA. Not that anybody's questioning that AVA's doing stuff, just that for an outsider, it's hard to find what's been tried, what happened, what programs are currently available. So sort of a public education shortfall, I guess, or a place to do better. There was also an interesting thing that the opportunities in the original LDBP to expand AVA's income stream beyond just ratepayers. And there were some programs in there like virtual power plant, ownership of facilities, on-bill lending for electrification. There were things that AVA could do to expand to other income streams, and it might be good to go back and look at those. There's a perceived reluctance on AVA's part to develop and own and develop assets and internal capabilities that often it's subcontracts for services, sometimes out of territory, instead of hiring or subcontracting within territory. And as I won't go into this much, but AVA should be more aggressive at defending itself and its ratepayers. We've already talked about that a lot. Regarding this, at the last CAC meeting, I raised concerns about the accessibility of early LDBP materials and including draft work products, webinars, stuff like that. And I hadn't been able to find it. Well, and if that's the page I was looking for, if you scroll down, you'll see there's links to all sorts of things that are could be very useful documents to look for. Yeah. They're there, they're live in the PDF because I happened to download it back in 2021. And when I look back at it in my notes, or, on my files, I found it. And, oh, the links are live. So all the data's there, but you can't get to it from the AVA page. There's no way to find it. So that's there. And I guess as
It's a lot of reading.
I guess, I don't know if this is appropriate, I would like to propose that AVA put that back somewhere on the public website.
Okay.
That's a good suggestion.
All right. Anything else other than? Okay.
No, we've got other meetings lined up and we're working on future even more. And we meet the first Wednesday of the month.
Perfect. All right, just to clarify the motion, you've identified and provided an item to support item C7. You discover that you have links to active documents under the EBCE portal or website.
Yeah.
That should be migrated over to AVA's domain as public documents.
They were on, yes, that's basically what I'm saying. They were on EBCE as public documents. When EBCE changed to AVA, apparently those didn't get migrated. That page got lost.
Yeah.
And just kind of on that note, yeah, when we kind of set up the AVA website, not everything, of course, there's so much, not everything got transferred over. A few of those materials too, there might have outdated kind of commentary on market conditions that, 8 years ago that weren't the most maybe helpful to have on the website at the time. But I can, of course, flag this, but that's just kind of the reason that they're no longer on the website.
But I think that letters of support and things really are very valuable to have. I know that there was a huge people supporting East Bay Community Energy at the time.
Okay. Well, I know that I bet Jim can work with Kate on this migration identification. We did get I believe a motion in a second, other dialogue to figure out what that would look like, because I think there's a scope.
Question or comment?
Thank you for that. Shiva. You have the floor.
I didn't have a question. It's very informative, the two subcommittees findings. I just wanted to thank the subcommittees for working on it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Shiva. With that, I'll move.
In terms of timing, I might have to drop off at 9 o'clock.
Yes, I think we're about to wrap up here in a couple minutes, I believe. You have
Thank
a
you.
comment?
Sorry, just one quick comment. It's like, I understand why, Kate, this wasn't migrated because so much of this is historical.
Bring your mic down.
Comments about proceedings and programs that we were looking at the time. But the LDP BP to a lot of us is so inherently important to this agency, like having a page where we can look at these historical documents, whether or not you put a slap, historical documents, whatever, it's good to have, I think, so.
Yes, and the just to clarify, the full LDBP is up on our website under the key documents page, so that's still there.
All right, so since we have a motion and a second, I could take public comment. Any other concern?
Yes. Public comment. There are no hands raised at this time. And with regards to the vote, there's, we still have a quorum.
Okay.
So,
We'll take a vote with those members in the room.
great, thank you. Member Landry,
Yes,
Member Balkison,
she just,
Her coat's still here.
She just stepped out.
Member Stevenson,
Yes.
thank you. Member Swaminathan,
Yes.
Member Pacheco,
Yes.
Member Harper, Member Lutz,
Yes.
Vice Chair Souza,
Yes.
and Chair Hernandez.
Yes, and Cynthia, did you
Motion's
vote?
approved.
yes, I do.
Okay, thank you. And motion's approved.
Yes.
All right, anything else from the ad hoc? Well, thank you very much. There's a lot of good work. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's a lot. So with that, thank you very much. Look forward for another update, and we'll see how you can work with Kate and to mitigate some of the documents, but hopefully I'll bring it to the board's attention, and hopefully you can, that's okay, not an issue, or do you think you work directly with them? Do we need to bring it up to the
Well, I
board?
sent the PDF. It's, Adrian has it.
Okay, I just want to make sure if that's okay, or do we need to bring it up to the board for approval, or we good here?
I mean, I can flag it from my
Okay,
team.
thank you. So you'll take care of that. Okay, great. That goes back, if you can still support the meeting on Wednesday, that'd be great, if I'm absent.
I do have another meeting at that time, so I will be able to speak at a certain time.
Okay, at the beginning, if you have ability.
However, we'll talk.
Okay, thank you. All right, we voted and it passed the first and second, so
I
sorry.
voted for you. No, I'm just kidding.
All right. CAC member and staff announcements. Anything else that we want to add to the agenda or discuss? Comments? I'll go around the
Are
room.
we gonna do more updates on the ad hocs?
The LDBP is continuing to work. I don't know about the affordability.
Yeah, we'll keep the item on the agenda. We'll keep the item on the agenda still. Okay, so Cynthia?
Yes, regarding the bill SB 332, I believe it passed out of the Appropriations Committee. I guess it's on its way back over to the Assembly, but I'd like to see that bill followed. And when our staff does the next legislative update, I would like to see how the bill is progressing through the California legislature.
And that's again about the IOU ones, right?
Yes.
And I ended up presenting that to the Alameda County Democratic Party to support that bill. So I was able to make that resolution and bring it forward. Since it didn't pass through our committee, I moved it through the Alameda County Democratic Central Committee to support SB 332. So worked on that offline. Yeah, so that went to the party, and according to Member Tragoo, he said, "Oh, do that." Like, okay. I couldn't get it done at this table, so I got it done at that table. So you know. Other comments, member items online?
There was a note that the meeting's in a different place next time.
Yes.
Yeah, that's correct. For our next CSE meeting in July, we'll be at a different location in downtown Oakland. The address is, I believe, listed in this agenda, and Adrian will, of course, make sure everyone is aware of that address. I think it's in the Rotunda building.
Yes, it's a
Adrian?
Rotunda building. We'll be there for two of our meetings in July and September while we carry out tenant improvements. The staff will work remotely. AVA will be fully operational, but we will not have access to the office for this time through the recess month.
Yeah, so it'll be same with the board meetings as well. They'll also be at an alternative location during that time.
Are they doing tenant improvements in this facility, this floor, and
Yes.
somewhere? Okay.
Yeah, this floor.
Okay, great. So, all right, we look forward to learning more and where to go. And will we have microphones? Will be echo? Are we in the middle of the Rotunda building? Are we in the suites?
Rules, new tech,
Okay.
all that fun stuff. Jim.
All right. Anything else? All right, it's about 9 o'clock. Thank you, everybody. Great job. Moving forward.
Jim, can I get your phone number?
Oh my gosh. That was-
Because I want